Events begin to take place in a crowded place, where a guy runs very quickly and asks to be given the opportunity to pass. The young man was very tired from running incredibly fast, but was ready to continue running to achieve his goal. Looking at the girl who was on the poster, he instantly became happy, and his fatigue disappeared. Sighing with relief, the hero realized that he had not come here in vain. After all, there was a diamond limited edition lying nearby, and there was only one box left. Reaching out his hand, the guy hoped that he would take away the latest edition of the limited edition. Suddenly, someone nearby also began to extend their hand in order to take the desired product. Some scoundrel in a mask was the first to dare to take away the goods that the main character wanted to get. His joy knew no bounds, and he literally gloated right in front of the upset guy, who, it would seem, was the first to come for the goods. It was really a very strong shock for the guy, and he realized that life is extremely cruel. Some time later, events continued to occur at the academy. The worried guy thought that if he was faster, he could get the very desired limited edition product, but due to the fact that it didn't work out for him, he was really very upset. Suddenly, someone decided to turn to a boy named Xian Fan and ask why he was so depressed. The comrade immediately realized that Xian Fan was never able to obtain the version of the Lightning Emperor that he was so fan of. And it was true, the hero was very upset, because he had been saving his pocket money for several months and finally waiting for the sale of the limited version of the Lightning Emperor. He simply slowed down one step. If the guy had been even a little faster, he obviously would have been able to buy a limited edition of the product. It turned out that the time of awakening should soon come, if he is awakened, and in this case they will be able to fight together right away, which is why they will not need games. The hero was extremely skeptical about this news, because awakening is God's gift, and it cannot be given to mere mortals like him. Meanwhile, the bell rang and the history lesson began. The teacher came to class and decided to make an announcement for her students. She wanted to tell them that the end of semester exam was coming up soon and today they would be giving them a general overview of history. By pressing the remote control button, the teacher wanted to show a presentation in order to clearly demonstrate the overview to the students. Ever since the gates of another world appeared, strong monsters began to emerge from them into their world. A bunch of powerful creatures and instantly allows humanity to feel what is called a catastrophe. But fortunately, God treated them fairly and rewarded them with a certain gift that only the elect have. Among people there are rare awakening phenomena that contribute to the fight against monsters. This ability was called God's gift, and made it possible for a person to become a Superman. The narrow-minded students did not want to believe in it, because they thought that it was all fiction. But the teacher continued to say that everyone has a chance to receive God's gift if they are over 16 years old. They were informed, exceeding logic and common sense, that such people fight with a gift to protect other people. Such people were truly heroes who served ordinary people in order to protect them. Looking at each other, the students did not believe what the teacher was telling them, because they had never been able to see a person with such a gift. The main character didn't even want to listen to this, because he didn't consider such people to be heroes. The teacher also added that those who obtain God's gift will be enrolled in the country created by God's Gift Academy. Everyone will be given benefits, and they will also not have to worry about food for the rest of their lives. Realizing all the strength and power of such people, the self-teacher wanted to wake up, because she understood that she could lie down comfortably and relax. At the same time, Xian Fan was thinking that the discounts and benefits were good, and he didn't have to worry about saving up money to buy the game. But still, in his mind, he only had the new Diamond limited edition of the Lightning Emperor. If he had the money, he could buy it at a higher price from a website called 20 Yellow Cows. The wise teacher noted that now all the students are 16 years old, and they should already be ready for changes in their bodies. And also, who knows, maybe one of them will be able to awaken, which is why she wanted to know if the students were excited. Instantly, all the students who were sitting in the class shouted that they were really excited. The sad guy at the same time thought that if he had received God's gift, he would not have hesitated when he bought the limited edition, and it would have been his. A little embarrassed, the teacher also asked the students that when one of them awakened, they should take care of her too in order to protect her. Continues to listen to her teacher, the students did not react to this in any way, and only sat silently and continued to listen to her. And now, their homework had to be announced. They had to go home and write an essay. The topic of the essay was to write what would happen if a student received God's gift. Continuing to do nothing in class, Xian Fan just looked out the window and dreamed. Some time later, he was actually very happy because it was finally the end of the lesson. Sighing with relief, the boy realized that now he could go and finally rest. Suddenly, he had a very strange feeling and did not understand what was happening. The feeling was truly unusual, as if the whole body was burning and covered with an unknown bright light. For the teacher and the surrounding students it was really very strange, because no one had ever seen anything like this before. The worried woman did not understand what was happening, because she was amazed that an ordinary student could be surrounded by such light. Experiencing a strong feeling of anxiety, the main character was amazed that he was surrounded by a light similar to fire that enveloped his entire body. The guy's hair instantly began to rise up as if levitating in the air. Not understanding what was happening, the teacher began to think that this was a gift from God that one of the students had. Continuing to watch the guy, the woman began to conclude that Xian Fan's disciple had awakened. The hero continued to watch the changes in his body without stopping, and was amazed at such a sudden awakening. The students immediately wanted to know what power the guy had awakened. They literally begged him to tell them as quickly as possible. Xian Fan didn't know how to respond to this, because he didn't know what kind of power he had actually awakened. Suddenly, a strange hologram appeared in front of the boy, which looked like something unearthly. Although he knew all types of God's gifts, he saw this gift of God for the first time, and this thing in front of him appeared like a panel and from some kind of game. While examining the system panel, the hero wanted to understand whether such an ability existed. The table displayed the name of the main character, as well as his attributes, which were indicated in detail on it. Continuing his research, the guy had never heard of such an ability before, despite the fact that he is a pro in all types of games, but still felt there was a catch. Instead of the column, the name of the donor was displayed, but Xian Fan could not understand what this even meant, because usually they just put the character's name. All this time, his classmates looked at him in surprise, because they did not understand what he was doing all this time. Realizing that he could not cope on his own, Xian Fan extended his hand and turned to the teacher. The friendly woman instantly wanted to answer his question, and decided to clarify what he was interested in. The awakened hero had a question about what types of gifts God's gift has. Immediately, the teacher responded that usually God's type of gift is internal and external. The external type is very easy to distinguish, because it is visible to the naked eye, and there is no need to examine the awakened one in detail. For example, one of the manifestations of God's external gift is the call of the wind, or rain. It is also possible to call on thunder, lightning, natural disasters, and other manifestations from outside. These are categories based on ability. There were also internal ones, and there are a lot of them. One of the manifestations was healing injuries, helping the sick. There was also the possibility of establishing an immune barrier, protection. They do not have certain conditions. The external type is easy to distinguish, but the internal type requires extensive testing and excavation to confirm its presence. The woman also wanted to know what it was like to be awakened. As a teacher, she feels proud when her student awakens and receives God's gift. Suddenly, at that very second, the teacher's body also began to glow, as if she was awakening. This immediately shocked the students, because they did not expect that the awakening would happen so unexpectedly. The boys and girls were really shocked because the teacher had also awakened, and there were now 2 awakened people in their class. Realizing that there were now 2 of them, some of the guys began to get very angry, because they also wanted to be awakened. Everyone was very jealous of the main character and the teacher, and wanted to find out from them how they woke up. A pensive Xian Fan thought that he never thought that he had so many abilities after awakening, which is why he wanted to find out if he could continue to live a normal life. Turning his head around, the guy saw something very strange, which he could not expect. Namely, a flying girl who flew straight into the school window, and probably wanted to get inside. At incredible speed, the mysterious red-haired girl continued to fly and did not stop. This caused a shock for the hero, because he could not understand what the stranger really wanted, and why she was approaching him. Stopping abruptly, the mysterious girl landed right on the window, which was not far from the guy. Turning around, the girl decided to look directly into Xian Fan's eyes, because she probably arrived precisely to him. Confused, the boy did not know how to react to such an incident, and was very frightened by what was happening. Suddenly, a very loud explosion was heard, and a giant hole appeared in the walls of the school. The hole instantly turned into an ominous portal that led in an unknown direction, and scared absolutely all the students. The portal was surrounded by bones, with skulls on top and on the sides that looked really dangerous. Watching the girl, the heroes really couldn't believe their eyes, because he realized that the character from the computer game was real. Not believing his eyes, Xian Fan continued to sit and think about what was happening here. Meanwhile, the mysterious red-haired girl exclaimed that everyone needed to leave this place as quickly as possible. The otherworldly gate was about to open, and this could threaten the lives of the students. With every second, the hole in the wall grew larger and larger, and the portal gradually opened. The alarmed teacher shouted to everyone, so that the students leave here as quickly as possible, and also did not forget to inform other students about this so that they also leave school. Instantly, all the students began to evacuate, because they understood that they were in danger. Some guys started shouting that an otherworldly gate was open in room 304. The entire school continued its evacuation to keep all students safe, and no one was injured. None of them understood what otherworldly gates were open and why it was so dangerous. The school children were also able to find out that someone awakened from a neighboring class, and then an otherworldly gate appeared. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the classroom, where otherworldly gates gradually opened. The alarmed hero and the teacher watched what was happening and did not understand what to do in this situation. The heroine also looked at the remaining people and thought about what could be done. Still, she decided to ask the remaining people why they were still here and what they were doing here. Starting to tremble, the teacher fell to the floor and said that her legs suddenly became weak and she could not get up. Sighing heavily, Xian Fan realized that he would have to take everything into his own hands. And I wanted to ask the girls if there was a safer place in this world than with them now. Turning around, the mystery girl exclaimed that she thought the guy was actually quite smart. A little embarrassed, she still decided to show what she was capable of and why she came here. After all, that's why she had to show the two of them who had just awakened, because it was necessary to fight with him. Approaching closer to the magical portal, the girl began to feel the one who was awakening. The anxious red-haired heroine continued to wait for the very creature that had been reborn to come out. At the same time, she asked Xian Fan to take care of her teacher in order to take her to a safe place. Suddenly, thick white smoke began to emerge from the portal, which foreshadowed the appearance of a certain creature. Fortunately, the brave girl was ready for battle, and was waiting for the scoundrel who dared to come here. The unknown creature began to gradually emerge from the portal, and one of its legs was visible. Suddenly, the head also became visible, and from the portal looked out a terrible creature that had 4 eyes and very sharp fangs. The evil creature was extremely unhappy that people stood in its way, and it began to scream in anger to frighten the awakened ones. Instantly the mutant jumped out of the portal, and, moving on 4 legs, began to move with great speed. Not understanding what was happening, Xian Fan was shocked by this turn of events, and stood rooted to the spot, because he did not know what to do. Fortunately, the mysterious girl was ready to fight, and using her magical abilities, she began to act. Looking into each other's eyes, the opponents were ready for battle, and this battle was to take place not for life, but for death. The creature from the underworld was literally ready to tear every person into pieces that was in this office. The main character also did not decide to stay on the sidelines, and, raising a chair, was going to defend his teacher. Although the guy was very scared, he still decided to act, because he understood that otherwise no one would survive here. The worried and frightened teacher begged the student to help her and protect her. Turning around, the boy decided to find out if the woman had a phone in order to call for help. Not understanding why he needed a phone, the girl decided to ask if he needed a phone in order to film everything. But there was no time to discuss this, and it was not worth wasting it, which is why the guy ordered to quickly give the phone to him. Without hesitation, the teacher gave the phone to her student so that he could use it to confront the monster. Taking the phone in his hands, Xian Fan shouted that the monster was coming out and it was necessary to hide. It was indeed so. An unknown creature had already emerged from the portal and was heading towards the people. A terrible beast from the underworld seemed to want to kill everyone in this room in order to feed on their magical energy. The determined heroine was ready to take on this fight, and stood right nearby next to the monster. Feeling a strong sense of anxiety, the main character and the teacher watched this in silence and hoped for a better outcome of the battle. The silence continued, people stood nearby the monster, and waited for its further actions in order to understand what to do. Examining the people, the mutant watched them with interest, studying them and examining them. Without feeling any fear, the red-haired girl also looked into the monster's eyes, as if enchanting him. It seemed that the creature could feel the fear and anxiety that came from the main character and the teacher, who were very scared. The evil beast began to scream and scream loudly, thereby frightening the people nearby. The alien monster stood next to the portal and awaited further actions from the awakened girl. Suddenly, using lightning magic, the red-haired heroine launched her attack in order to defeat the arrogant monster. The creature immediately fixed its gaze on the girl and wanted to counter her attack. The determined lady was ready to finish off the scoundrel in order to save all of humanity. Magic lightning began to appear on her hand, signaling that she was about to strike. With every second the girl was getting closer to the unknown creature in order to turn it around. Suddenly, fire began to appear from the creature's mouth, and its eyes shone with a bright red flame. At that same second, the monster began to spew fire from its mouth, which was directed directly at the people who stood in front of it. This caused concern for the mysterious heroine, because she understood that her life could now be in danger. Fortunately, the girl was easily able to dodge such a serious blow from the monster. Using her magical abilities, the lady continued to levitate in the air in order to perform a follow-up attack. With all her strength, the girl pushed off from the ceiling in order to gain speed in order to counterattack. Meanwhile, the monster continued its attack, and spewed shafts from its mouth without stopping. Using lightning magic, the red-haired stranger rushed in to deal a crushing blow and destroy the insolent one. Lightning magic was supposed to defeat the demonic creature that dared to appear in the ordinary world. The demon immediately noticed that they were trying to attack him, and decided to take measures to avoid this attack. The clever creature rushed to dodge in order not to fall under the lightning barrage. Not expecting this, the girl was shocked that the monster was so smart that he was able to evade such an unexpected attack. It turned out that the target was actually the main character along with his teacher, who were very afraid of an unknown creature. With a terrifying look, the monster continued to move towards the people in order to destroy them, and no one else dared to interfere with him. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, the heroine began to run to the rescue, in the hope that she would have time to finish off the monster before it harmed someone. At the last moment, the girl shouted with all her might for people to run away from here as quickly as possible. But they didn't listen to her, and continued to stand still, waiting for the monster, which was getting closer every second. All this time, the hero looked straight into the eyes of the monster, and hoped that he could repel his attack and resist him. The brave guy was afraid, but continued to protect the teacher so that she would survive. Seeing the explosion that occurred from the monster's attack, which was completely nearby, the teacher became even more frightened. Trembling with fear, she began to cuddle up to the guy so that he would protect her and not let her be offended. In fact, the brave teacher shouted that she would not allow the monster to harm her student, and with her body, she tried to block Xian Fan from the attack. The monster didn't care at all about human emotions and continued to attack no matter what. At the same time, the guy stood unshakably in one place, waiting for an attack, and hoping only for the best. Using his mind, the hero decided to counterattack and threw the phone towards the monster, hoping that it would help in the battle. The thrown phone sent the creature flying several meters upward, because the blow was quite strong. The brave girl, meanwhile, continued her attack, and used all her strength to carry out a powerful attack and destroy the villain. The blow hit the hellish creature right in the head, and it began to scream from the pain and anger that it felt towards people. This blow did not affect the demon, and he again continued to attack, but changed his target, because he saw a danger in the girl. The lightning mage immediately noticed this and realized that she needed to act and confront this creature. Suddenly, the girl decided to land on the floor in order to continue her fight with the villain. But it turned out that the last blow was decisive for the hellish creature, and now it could no longer fight, because it was defeated. I continue to look at the monster. The hero did not believe that the battle was really over, and he was wary. The teacher continued to cuddle up to the guy, and screamed at him not to be afraid, because she was going to protect her student, even if she had to die. The excited woman cried from the realization that she might have to die in this fight, because she was protecting the guy. The hero clearly did not expect such an attitude from the teacher, and was pleasantly surprised by this. Having hugged the woman, he decided to tell her that everything was fine now, and she shouldn't scream, because now it was safe. Looking around, the girl could not believe that the battle was really over and they had survived. Immediately she decided to move away from the guy to make sure that they were really alive and well. The lady was pleasantly surprised that she did not die and that all her students were safe and sound. Sighing with relief, Xian Fan was glad about this outcome of events, because he understood that in this battle no one except the monster was hurt. Coming closer, the woman began to examine the guy to make sure that everything was okay with him. The smart hero thanked the woman for giving him her phone, because thanks to him they did not die. The trembling teacher could not believe his words, because she understood that her student was really a kind of genius. Suddenly, the woman began to cry again, and hugged the student to her, because she was very glad that he was okay, because earlier she was very scared. From such a tight hug, Xian Fan couldn't even breathe, and literally began to beg the woman to let him go. But the teacher could not control herself and continued to hug the surviving student whom she treasured so much. Experiencing severe stress, the woman became embarrassed and accidentally fell to the floor, crushing the embarrassed student with her. Their savior watched everything that happened, who was shocked by such unexpected behavior. Still, the student managed to push his teacher away, because she really behaved inappropriately. Having calmed down a little, Xian Fan decided to get back on his feet, because he understood that he could not allow this to happen again. Suddenly, the stranger exclaimed that such a feat on the part of the guy was really not bad. The red-haired girl was amazed that the hero was able to be so calm until now, although their lives were in danger. After all, many awakened ones peed in their pants when faced with such situations, which is why the girl wanted to find out how the hero did it. As it turned out, such calmness on the part of the main character is due to the fact that he was playing a computer game called The Gift of the Gods. For a stranger, this was truly surprising, because the boy believed that she was directly involved in its development. The main character also knew that this monster was a child of Cerberus. It was a demonic wolf emitting flames. It is very careful and cunning. First they attack a weak enemy. This is why the main character needed a phone, because lithium batteries explode when exposed to high temperatures. This turn of events really shocked the teacher, because it was her phone. As it turned out, she just bought this phone, and it was brand new, and now it's ruined. The good-natured guy looked at the woman and said that he would pay her for ruining the phone. A little embarrassed, the girl asked not to forget about her words, and also not to regret it, otherwise she would start pestering him, because teachers have a very small salary. The stranger continued to watch everything that was happening, and realized that this guy really helped her. But still, because of her sense of pride, the girl exclaimed that she could have killed this monster even without Xian Fan's help. The smart guy immediately realized that the opening of the otherworldly gate and her appearance was not a coincidence at all in this case. Looking at the main character, the red-haired heroine instantly realized that this person was really a sharp eye. Although he probably had such an instinct thanks to the games, he still wanted to know what was happening here, because there was nothing like this in the official records before. It was clear that the girl was trying to hide something, because she exclaimed that it didn't matter, because the donor should already know this. Not understanding what was happening, Xian Fan continued to look at the stranger, hoping that she would at least explain something. Sitting on the floor, the girl began to think about the incident, and about the question of the main character. The embarrassed guy and the teacher continued to watch the red-haired girl, hoping that she would tell them the secrets she was hiding. Continuing her thoughts, the girl sat on the floor and thought about what to answer them. After some time, she decided to get back on her feet and continued to think again. Walking around the class, the stranger continued her thoughts in order to understand what happened here and talk about it. All this time, the main character was watching her, and was amazed at this behavior on the part of the stranger. Still, Xian Fan understood that this girl did not know how to communicate at all, and she clearly had problems with communication. Suddenly, the girl started clapping and shouting that she knew the answer to his question. This reaction alarmed people a little, because they did not understand what the girl was talking about. As it turns out, simply put, it's a type of effect that they don't know about, and they call it greedy. This statement really surprised the main character, because he did not understand what greed has to do with it. Suddenly, the teacher also exclaimed that she knows that since there is a gift, there is also greed itself. Although this was not the reason, Xian Fan realized that the argument actually sounded reasonable. Turning to the lady, he wanted to understand why no one knew about this effect. Hundreds of years ago, people criticized the emergence of the greedy as a disaster brought by the awakened ones, which is why it caused a great conflict. Thus, a restriction appeared: each donor will patrol or carry out missions at a certain period of time every day. It will also prevent greedy incidents, and protect new donors from incidents that may happen as a result of monsters attacking them. At the same time, in order to avoid incidents, they do not disclose this information and hide it so that scoundrels and enemies cannot take advantage of it and interfere with the protection of newcomers. And also, in order to prevent conflicts of interest that may arise as a result of disclosure of information. The hero was amazed by this story, because he did not understand why all this was hidden, and what would happen to those people who found out all this. This reaction really surprised the heroine, because she did not understand what Xian Fan meant by these words. After laughing, the girl said that he thinks too much, and the consequences will be eliminated by people with memory erasing abilities. That is why, most likely, everyone will remember this as the practice of a disaster that actually did not happen. Let me breathe a sigh of relief. The hero realized that this was truly an excellent outcome of this situation in order to enable the students to continue to study safely. Suddenly, he realized something, and it really shocked him, because perhaps he was to blame for this incident. Turning to the red-haired girl, the guy asked her to wait with such statements, and wanted to ask one single question. Feeling anxious, Xian Fan remembered that she said that one donor causes one greedy incident. Hearing this question, the girl immediately exclaimed that this was indeed true. Realizing the danger, she realized that this would not be the only incident that would occur at the moment. Looking around, she began to see if there was anyone near her, but fortunately, there was nothing to the right or left. The back was also empty, the top was empty, the bottom was empty, there were no monsters nearby. The worried guy began to think about the possibility that the monster was hiding somewhere else. Feeling the approach of an evil creature, the heroine began to panic because she did not see him, and did not know when he would attack. Suddenly, at that same second, the wall seemed to explode, and many stones began to fly from side to side from such a strong explosion. This incident really shocked the stranger because she didn't expect that there would be another monster who wanted to attack them. With a powerful blow, the hellish creature was able to throw the heroine away, attacking her using the effect of surprise. Such a strong blow threw the girl several tens of meters to the side, and she hit the wall, feeling severe pain. On the other side of the classroom, another hellish portal appeared, through which an unknown creature began to attack. Gradually, the hellspawn emerged from the portal, and slowly examined the territory in order to find an object to attack. In appearance, this creature was much stronger, and had armor that protected it and made it invulnerable. The unknown hellish beast looked like a bull, its eyes glowed with a bright red light, and its gaze seemed to be distraught. The terrifying monster completely emerged from the portal, and looking around, looked for victims in order to strike them with his powerful blows. Realizing hopelessness, Xian Fan and his teacher were again shocked and thought about what they should do to survive and win. The arriving monster instantly sought to attack, and began to run towards innocent people with great speed. A few seconds later, the giant creature approached the young man and the woman, and continued to observe their behavior, as if expecting something. Feeling fear, the guy began to panic, because the hellish demon was very close. He did not have the strength to resist it. With a threatening look, the demon looked straight into the eyes of the main character, and it seemed that he was going to attack him right now. The main character was really very scared, because he did not yet possess that very superpower in order to defeat a strong opponent. The worried teacher lay on the floor and began to cry, from the hopelessness of this situation. Suddenly, someone threw a brick at the head of the demonic creature, which flew straight to the target with incredible speed. A piece of brick hit the villain with all his might, causing him to gradually begin to fall to the floor. Still, the strongest demon stood on his feet and felt even greater rage than before. It turned out that this brick was the heroine who had previously saved everyone from the demon. The girl began to wave her arms in order to dispel the smoke, which was not far from her and was impairing visibility. Soon all the smoke cleared and the lady shouted for all the people to run away from here immediately. The creature instantly drew attention to the surviving girl and wanted to immediately attack her in order to destroy her. As it turned out, in fact, the demon decided to attack Xian Fan, and began to swing at him with all his might in order to deliver a crushing blow. The hero began to scream in fear, because he did not know how to stop this attack, because he could not even think calmly, because of the stress he was experiencing. Fortunately, the stranger attacked the villain, and thus repelled the attack on innocent people. After all, no one should have suffered in this battle except the monster himself. The impact was truly impressive because the giant monster began to fall to the floor, experiencing a strong feeling of pain. The battle continued, and the giant was still standing, although he felt severe pain from the heroine's power. At the same time, the girl managed to land on Earth in order to continue the battle with the mutant. The determined red-haired girl continued to fight to the last, and was going to destroy the vile creature. And all this time the main character was watching the lady and studying her blows, because he also wanted to fight such vile creatures. Xian Fan also realized that he liked this girl very much, because she was pretty, and also very strong. Suddenly, his mood changed dramatically, because he saw that the monster began to move again. At the last moment, the brave girl shouted for people to run away quickly, because this monster was too dangerous. The heroine had absolutely no time to worry about ordinary and weak people, so she literally ordered them to run away from here. The confused hero again stood motionless, and did not know what to do in this situation, as if he had not heard the girl. Turning her attention to the hero, the lady noticed that he really liked her, because he constantly continued to look at her. Meanwhile, the monster continued its attack and approached its target with incredible speed to crush its enemies. Without showing his emotions, the hero exclaimed that he understood everything, and they would now leave. Extending his hand to the teacher, the boy said that they needed to leave here as soon as possible, otherwise they might have problems. It was noticeable that the teacher was not himself. She seemed to have lost her mind, because she was confused and alarmed by what was happening. He looked at the teacher, and the hero again shouted for them to leave here, because they could die here if they stayed. In a trembling voice, the teacher exclaimed that she could not get up and therefore did not want to leave here. The demon was getting closer every second, and was watching its targets in order to finally take their lives and profit from their flesh. A little embarrassed, the boy exclaimed that the teacher should not hit him or slap him in the face. Confused, the woman did not understand what was going on, because she did not know what her student wanted to do with her. It turned out that he decided to pick her up in order to move her to a safer place. This made the teacher and student feel incredibly embarrassed, but at the same time they understood that this was the only way out of such a difficult situation. In any case, they needed to leave this place as soon as possible, so they began to run with all their might. Overcoming muscle pain, the hero continued to run with all his might in order to leave this damned place. Being a little embarrassed, the boy decided to turn to the teacher, whom he was holding in his arms. The concerned woman immediately wanted to know what was the matter and why they turned to her. In fact, Xian Fan just wanted to say that the teacher was simply very heavy, and it was difficult for him to bear. Feeling awkward, the teacher explained that the whole point was that she had recently stopped using a diet, which is why she gained weight. At the same time, the heroine heard this whole conversation, and she really didn't like that Xian Fan was communicating with the teacher in such a spirit. Still, she was glad that the people left here, and now she could continue the fight with a terrible monster that could easily kill them. The red-haired girl sighed heavily and wanted to continue this fight in order to end the life of the impudent monster. The creature from the demonic portal was approaching every second. You also wanted to destroy your target and start fighting with ordinary people. Compared to the girl, the demon was truly impressive in size, literally several times larger than the young lady. Feeling a little anxious, the heroine said that she would never have thought that he would appear here because of greed. Using her magical powers, the lady exclaimed that the information must be changed and all enemies will be destroyed. The monster continued to watch her and wanted to destroy his opponent, which is why he wanted to launch an attack. But the girl was first, and she suddenly jumped out at the enemy and decided to attack him in order to get rid of the hellish spawn. At the same time, the main character continued to run, and without stopping he saved the teacher from imminent death. The frightened student and the lady ran with all their might. Although they experienced a strong feeling of fear and pain, they still had to leave this terrible place. Some time later, they began to go down the steps, and brave guy continued to carry his teacher. All this time he was thinking that the heroine was already wounded, and most likely it would be a very difficult battle indeed. In this case, if she loses, the teacher and he, as well as everyone below, will be in danger and will suffer from a terrible creature. The brave man exclaimed that this should not happen, and he must come up with something in this situation in order to help the heroine. But now the situation was hopeless, because it was necessary first to save the teacher, who could not even walk on her own. Continuing to think about the current situation, the hero knew that in order to help her, he must first find out his abilities before going there. Suddenly, an idea came into his head that could be brought to life. After all, when he began to change, a strange board appeared in front of his face, with the help of which it was possible to develop his skills. It was possible to use those strange abilities somehow, and in this case the guy wanted to know what their functions were. Suddenly, an inscription appeared in front of his face that he had been given a gift from the evil king, which he could now take away. Without thinking twice, the hero pressed the button to receive a gift in order to pick up the well-deserved prize. It turned out that those who favor the evil king will be gifted. The subject can choose the target's attribute to borrow it and use it or lend it to someone else. The value must be no higher than that of the gifted person. The ability is now at the beginner rank stage. It was limited to the target, and its duration is 1 minute. The cooldown is 3 minutes. At that very second, the hero realized that this ability was really quite useful, and who knows, maybe it would really help. With all their might, the guy and the teacher continued to run, without stopping to escape danger. Fortunately, they didn't have long to run, and they were almost at a safe place to stop there. Still, they came to that very place, and the boy exclaimed that they were finally there. The tired guy began to lower the teacher so that she could independently reach a safe place. He also asked the teacher to quickly leave and meet with the rest of the students, so that they could all go to the shelter together. As soon as the teacher remained sitting on the floor, the hero turned around in order to run to the aid of the mysterious red-haired girl. Unexpectedly, the teacher started to stop Xian Fan because she wanted to tell him something. The alarmed woman wanted to understand what the young man was going to do in this situation. The guy decided to explain that the heroine was wounded, and perhaps she would not be able to hold out until reinforcements arrived, which is why he had to help her. Experiencing severe stress, the woman could not understand how an ordinary guy could help her against such a strong opponent. Xian Fan knew that the system is a gift. Until he understands what it is, then he should not talk about it. Smiling, he explained to the teacher that he is now a giver, and he has his own ways, and the teacher must leave here. Tears began to well up in the woman's eyes because she felt that she was useless and could not help. Turning around again, the main character continued to move towards the scene of events in order to save the red-haired lady. Suddenly, an unexpected event happened again, and he clearly did not expect something like this. The woman stopped him again and said that he could not do this because she would not allow him. An ordinary student cannot do this because she, as a teacher, cannot allow him. The disciples were already on the verge of death, and if he went there, he could get hurt and put himself in danger. Laughing at this decision, the boy told the teacher that before making a decision, she had better look at her feet. Not understanding what the student was talking about, the teacher decided to listen to him and really look at her feet. As soon as the woman looked at her legs, they immediately began to give way and shake, which is why she could not calmly stand still. Acting decisively, she again shouted that no means no, and Xian Fan cannot go there. Falling to the floor, the lady was against her student going to such a serious battle, due to the fact that he did not even have experience in such battles. Even though she was scared, she was still going to stop the guy because she didn't want him to be in danger. After all, as a teacher, she cannot allow her students to put themselves in danger, because that is her responsibility as a teacher. The hero was really very embarrassed from such care, because he did not expect that a woman would take such care of him. As he got closer, Xian Fan wanted to tell her something because he could see that she was really trying very hard. He first decided to pat the girl on the head before telling her something. After all, he decided to talk about the fact that despite the fact that she is clumsy and stupid, she is still an excellent teacher. That's why he wanted to ask the teacher to do something important for him. The woman really didn't mind, because it was her duty as a teacher to help her students. This was really great news for the hero, because in this case he could win this fight. All this time, the woman could not understand what kind of help the student would still need from her. Looking at each other, the girls still wanted to know what kind of help would be needed from her. It turned out that the help would be that the teacher would have to lend her dexterity. The embarrassed woman began to have a strange feeling that she had never experienced before. She really felt uneasy because her legs were starting to give way and her neck was incredibly painful, making it impossible for her to turn. As if the disabled girl began to approach the main character, because she felt unwell and thought that she was going to die. Pressing closer and trembling with fear, the woman wanted to feel the warmth from her student, so that he would take pity on her. Feeling a strong sense of anxiety and panic, looking straight into the eyes of her student, she decided to ask what was happening to her. Immediately after this question, the teacher lost consciousness, and the smart guy began to take her to another place. Looking around, he looked for a suitable place to leave her, and she was safe and sound. Looking from side to side, Xian Fan continued to look for a place where he could leave the innocent teacher. Calmly going down the steps, he even stopped thinking about the fact that the red-haired girl was also fighting a demon and needed help. The caring guy still found a place where he could leave the teacher, who was unconscious and could not even move on her own. The boy assumed that all this happened because it was very worried, which is why she lost consciousness. He also assumed that after some time she would feel much better, and she would be able to walk on her own. Blushing, the woman asked if that was really the whole point, or if the reason could be completely different. It was truly a shame for her, because she had disgraced herself in front of her dear student, and now she could burn with shame. Listening to stories from a distraught teacher was indeed very strange for the main character, which is why he felt awkward. Suddenly, an alert from the system appeared in front of him, which wanted to warn him about something. It turned out that thanks to the efforts that had just been made to move the teacher, he was given +3 points in dexterity. His agility was finally improved, but agility actually represents the speed of the body, the speed of coordination and reaction. His physique was also below normal. In any case, the teacher no longer needed these attributes, because she was as agile as a cow, and her speed was extremely low. Suddenly, a very loud explosion was heard, and fire began to rise from the hole created by the explosion, which covered the entire area not far from the explosion. This event immediately attracted the attention of the hero and the teacher, and they decided to find out what was happening there. The fight continued, and the red-haired girl suffered because the demon was much stronger than her, and she could not resist his courage and demonic flames. The blow was so powerful that the heroine flew out of the window and flew several hundred meters to the side. Fortunately, the mysterious girl was able to survive, and wanted to continue fighting, even though it was very difficult for her. The brazen spawn of hell, incinerating everything in its path, had no sense of pity, but only wanted to destroy all of humanity. The hellish demon screamed with all his might in order to frighten everyone in his path and destroy them. As if nothing had happened, the students began filming everything on their mobile phones, because they believed that this was just some person in a suit who could not pose any danger. For the schoolchildren this was indeed a very cool event, because they saw a character from the game called the Lightning Emperor. Suddenly, at that very second, their phones suddenly turned off, as if they had suddenly been broken. The screens on the students' phones turned black, and none of them could understand what was happening. Someone behind started clapping and smiling to get the students' attention. The mysterious woman decided to say hello to the teachers and students and decided to talk to them. The stranger asked everyone to pay attention to her, and everyone instantly turned their gaze in her direction. As soon as they saw the woman, all the schoolchildren were immediately fascinated by her appearance, because they did not expect to see her here. Meanwhile, the battle continued, and the heroine did not want to give up, although she experienced great difficulties in fighting such a monster. Using a kick attack, the lady decided to throw a stone at the villain in order to stun him and stop his crushing attack. The giant stone began to fly straight at the monster, and he began to scream in indignation because he saw how the worthless girl was attacking him. The blow was truly impressive, because from the force of this blow the creature began to scream in pain and anger. Rushing towards the scoundrel, the mysterious red-haired lady was going to finish the battle that had begun and destroy the scoundrel so that he would not dare to attack anyone again. After the blow, the girl again found herself in the office, where the first fight with the demon began, because she and the monster fell there through the window opening. At that very second, the main character realized that even if he helped, it would be too late, going there would be completely pointless. Using his acquired agility parameters, the guy nevertheless decided to rush to the aid of the mysterious girl in order to crush this monster along with her and become a hero. The helpless teacher again shouted at Xian Fan not to leave her, because she could help too. In fact, it will only be better for the hero if the teacher remains here. Indeed, in this case, this will be the best help for him, and it will not interfere with him. Not expecting this, the useless woman was shocked by such a cold and emotionless response. Soon after, she became indignant because this scoundrel dared to tease an adult, and in her opinion, he did not dare to do so. Xian Fan was very furious at the behavior of this useless teacher, who only bothered him, and was only a burden, because she could not help at all, but only got in the way. After all, in reality he just wanted to live peacefully and happily, play games that he likes, do his hobbies, get married, that's the best thing. If not, then he has a waifu instead of a wife, and he was going to live happily until he dies. I sigh heavily. He still didn't understand why he was drawn into something that could radically affect his life. Feeling hopeless in this situation, the hero understood that he needed to make a choice and still help win a serious battle. Gathering his strength, he looked at the path he had to take and began to prepare to run. With all his strength, Xian Fan began to run towards where the fight was taking place between the red-haired lady and the terrible demonic creature. After all, if he cannot deal with this problem, otherwise he will not be able to live the life he would like. Suddenly, the hero felt a very strange and unusual feeling, as if his entire body was very light, and he could run incredibly fast due to this. The surprised boy continued to look at his hands, which he moved with incredible ease, and realized that this was all for a reason. The woman, who did not understand anything, continued to look at the hero, who stood in one place, and examined her body with surprise. It turned out that the teacher was looking at him for a reason, because smoke began to come out from under his feet, because he was running so fast that his shoes almost caught fire. Turning around, Xian Fan decided to thank his teacher, because all this was possible, only thanks to her. After a short gratitude, he immediately began to run towards the scene of events in order to complete the battle that had begun and help the heroine. Sitting on the floor, the woman could not understand why the student thanked her, because she had done absolutely nothing, but was only a burden who was not capable of anything. In any case, the smart guy believed that in this way the teacher helped him, because he was able to borrow agility parameters from her, with the help of which he moved much faster. His speed was truly impressive, moving faster than any professional runner. Suddenly, running along the school corridor, he saw something very surprising, something that he could not expect. It turned out that it was a giant monster that continued to fight with the girl, and swung again to deliver a stunningly powerful blow. The blow was truly incredible, because with just one blow the monster could destroy an entire wall in the corridor. Pieces of stones literally began to fly off from it. The red-haired mysterious girl was also not easy. She could easily dodge such serious blows, and counterattacked even though her attacks were not so strong. Flying in the air, the girl analyzed how she could make an attack in order to cause as much harm as possible to the mutant. The skilled warrior could easily float in the air, and did many somersaults before launching an attack. Soon, she nevertheless decided to strike, and gathered her strength in order to hit the hellish demon right in his disgusting face. But suddenly, it turned out that the girl missed, and the demon was able to move away from the site of the strike, which is why the strongest lightning attack hit the floor. The hellish creature was only happy with this outcome of events, because the attack could really cause him colossal harm, but he was easily able to dodge the awkward heroine. Upon returning, the girl noticed that the student had also come to help her in a difficult battle, and wanted to finish what he started by fighting the demon. Observing everything that was happening, Xian Fan concluded that it seems that these two monsters decided to destroy everything around here. Because usually combat power has a threefold gap, which is how monsters are crushed every time. In order for the heroine to do this, she must use absolute power and a gap in combat power to destroy the demon with one blow, and not fight him for a whole day. The overwhelming force was not enough, because the girl was very weakened, and she could no longer fight as she had done before. But if she were to use the triple break, then it would be a decisive factor, because it would use martial techniques and years of combat experience that would truly influence the outcome of the battle. Her psychological state was very depressed, because she could not cope with the monster in battle, and confront him on equal terms, because he was much stronger. Willpower and morale were also suppressed, because in fact the monster was literally destroying her, and did not give her the opportunity to finish the battle by defeating him. The battlefield was gradually destroyed, because with each blow, damage was caused to all the surrounding walls and floor, which is why the building where the battle took place could collapse at any second. The overall strategy was also bad, because in fact the heroine did not put in the necessary effort to defeat the monster and finish this fight, because she was already completely exhausted. Analyzing everything that was happening, Xian Fan understood this, that is why he decided to help her, so that after all she could not die in a fight with the monster. Also, a previously unexpected attack wounded her, which is why she was no longer so dexterous and confident in her victory, because the wound was really very serious. From that same crushing blow, the girl crashed into a concrete wall, and the blow influenced the subsequent course of the battle, because the injury was critical. The heroine took it upon herself to protect all the students and teachers in this school, so she continued to fight so that no ordinary people would be harmed. But in order to stop a tall monster with high defense and extremely high attack power, it is necessary to put in even more effort. What the girl did was an absolutely pointless exercise, because she only angered the cowhead. With flaming eyes, the demonic creature continued to watch its target, and was determined to fight, because the monsters were ready to kill anyone who stood in their way. The best option for the fight was to fight at medium distances, because the demon has such abilities that he can easily win at close and long range. First you need to deplete the giant monster's strength so that it can no longer block attacks and fight back in battle. Then you need to unleash the final attack to carry out a killing move, and finally end this long and painful battle. Overcoming fatigue, the heroine continued to fight, although it was really very difficult for her, but she tried to do everything possible. Preparing for the subsequent attack, the girl tried to restore her strength as quickly as possible in order to deliver the strongest attack from her arsenal. This attack was supposed to destroy the enemy, force him to surrender, and then kill him and still win the fight. The worried hero continued to watch everything that was happening, and realized that it seemed that she could not find an opportunity to increase the distance and it did not look good. The battlefield was indeed disadvantageous for the red-haired girl, because the corridor was extremely small, and it was indeed very inconvenient to fight in it. But if she does not succeed in the battle, then he and the teacher will most likely die in the clutches of this monster, because they will not be able to oppose anything to him. That is why the boy was determined, because it was necessary to act to help in this fight. Because of this, he can only rely on two skills that were currently available to him, and they could be selected in the system. These skills could be loaned, and certain parameters that were currently available to the main character could be borrowed. Luckily, he had been playing games for so many years that he had some experience in fighting monsters, but this type of ability defied logic. Initially, the guy decided to invest all his skills into agility, and now he had 20 agility points. Immediately he felt changes in his body, and felt an incredible lightness that he had never experienced before. His abilities also affected his strength, and he realized that he now needed to act. As soon as the decision was made, Xian Fan began to run with all his might, and did it so quickly that all that was left of him was only a trace on the floor. In a few seconds, the guy was able to run several hundred meters, and found himself not far from the scene where the battle was taking place. Looking around, he wanted to see where that mysterious red-haired girl was, and the monster that needed to be defeated. The battle continued and the girl was very traumatized. It was extremely difficult for her to fight, but she continued anyway because she was responsible for many people's lives. Trembling in pain, the heroine was determined and wanted to do everything possible to defeat this monster and finish the battle that had begun. The enraged demon began to scream with all his might, and then swung to deliver his crushing blow directly at the innocent girl, who looked completely helpless in comparison. Fortunately, the stranger was indeed very dexterous, and she was easily able to dodge such a serious attack, which could destroy walls and all other earthly objects that were in her way. Countering the scoundrel, the brave lady attacked him directly in the stomach, which did not give him the opportunity to continue his furious attacks, which were delivered one after another. Experiencing great difficulties, anger, and fear, the red-haired woman continued the battle, and saw that her attacks were so weak that she could not really inflict damage on the demon. The weakling continued to watch everything that was happening, and still did nothing, because he did not understand how he could still help in this fight. While watching the battle, Xian Fan realized that as expected, she was trying to buy time, but she did not have the space and time to use her super destructive skill. I continue to look at the battle. He still decided that it was necessary to start helping, and still do at least something to win the battle. First, he began to call the system in order to use his skill and help the mysterious girl in battle. A few seconds later, the system table was successfully called up, and with its help it was possible to borrow parameters for the main character. By extending his hand, Xian Fan wanted to truly contribute to this battle so as not to be as useless as he was before. Acting decisively, the hero decided to borrow the dexterity of the monster in order to become stronger and make the demonic creature weaker. The enraged creature immediately noticed certain changes in its body that affected its agility and mobility, and did not give it the opportunity to attack so quickly. This really seriously affected the creature's skills, because he did not understand how this was possible, and what was even happening to him. Taking advantage of this, the stranger decided to attack, and hit the impudent demon with all her might, incinerating him with such a serious blow. The girl did not suffer from such a powerful blow, but the impudent man felt really very bad, because now he was slightly weakened. At the same time, the demon continued to stand in place, as if he had really received such serious damage that he could not move at all. Turning around, the heroine noticed the same guy who had previously been one of the students, and was sitting in the classroom when hellish portals began to appear. Surprised, she clearly did not expect that a simple student would be able to provide her with at least some help and somehow weaken such a strong opponent. All this time, the young man drew agility parameters from a creature that was much stronger than himself, and did everything possible to make at least some contribution to this battle. Thus, after several minutes of diligently absorbing agility, the main character no longer had 20 agility points, but all 40 points. But as expected, the high-level monster, even being a strength type, only barely slowed down after the 20 points of agility disappeared. Fortunately, this skill really worked, because although it did not greatly affect the subsequent battle, still, now the young man had become much stronger and more agile. Xian Fan was really very happy about this, because he understood that his skills really work, and he can now use them in practice to finally help do at least something in such an unequal battle. Initially, the boy had a plan that he would slow down the enemy, and the girl would attack in order to cause at least some harm to the demon. In turn, after the enemy is distracted, the red-haired one will need to use her signature move, and thus there will be a chance to make an effective attack. Confused, the girl was very amazed that an ordinary person could provide her with at least some help against a fight with a creature not from this world. She also began to be indignant because she had previously asked the young man to leave here, and now it is unknown why he returned here again. At that same second, the boy exclaimed that the heroine should be careful, because the monster began to attack again. Experiencing intense rage, the demon continued to try to destroy his opponent with the help of brute force, which he used all the time. From a strong feeling of anger, smoke began to come out of the creature's mouth and nose, and its eyes began to glow even more with a bright red light. His movements became more constrained, and it seemed that he had actually lost a little dexterity, because now he was not moving as quickly as before. But also, the villain's strength did not diminish, and he continued to try to do everything possible to destroy the innocent lady who wants to save all of humanity. Having rested a little after the ill-fated battle, the girl was determined and wanted to confront the scoundrel. Using all her agility, the red-haired girl jumped away from the crushing blow with all her strength and began to float in the air. The girl, experienced in combat, immediately noticed that the enemy's movements had slowed down greatly, and then she realized that Xian Fan was probably involved in this. Turning around, the creature instantly began to look at the hero, who was able to absorb his agility and became much faster. At the same time, he decided to answer the girl, saying that it was indeed he who was involved in the fact that the extraterrestrial being began to move and fight much more slowly. The enemy did not like this outcome of events very much, and he closely watched the young man, who seemed to be a very weak man who could easily be defeated. Because of this, the horned scoundrel began to run with all his might towards the guy in order to finish him off, because he had taken away his agility, and now it is much more difficult for the demon to fight. The smart lady, meanwhile, wanted to counterattack the enemy while he was distracted by the man who dared to appear on the battlefield. Standing on the floor, the girl began to order Xian Fan to run away from here as quickly as possible and not to approach, because it could be very dangerous. But the guy didn't care anymore, because he had already begun to run away from the scoundrel who was chasing him with all his might. Continuing to run away, he shouted that the heroine should not approach him, because he wanted to complete this battle on his own. Still, the guy couldn't do without the help of such a strong ally, which is why he shouted for the stranger to get ready to attack. The frightened young man ran with all his might. I hope that his plan will succeed, and they will be able to at least cause some harm to such a strong creature. At the same time, the demon did not even imagine that an assassination attempt was already being prepared on him, and they were luring him into a trap in order to attack him with the most powerful attack. A little embarrassed, Xian Fan admitted that he needed help, which is why he began to call the red-haired girl to his place. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly in order to carry out another maneuver that was originally planned. Although it was indeed very dangerous, the student wanted to save all his classmates from such a serious monster that could threaten their lives. The horned insolent continued to come closer every second to the simple young man, who could not fight with him on an equal basis, but only dodged and ran away. Fortunately, with the help of superhuman agility, the protagonist was able to slip through the legs of his opponent. He really had no equal, because not everyone had such excellent dexterity, which is why the main character was able to survive in such a difficult situation. Thus, Xian Fan was able to go behind his opponent's back, and he did not even understand where the young man was, who had literally just been in front of him. Stretching out his hand, the boy again wanted to use his amazing skill, which he had already managed to use once on the scoundrel. The skill that was used had to reborrow the dexterity that was inherent in the Minotaur, which is why it should have weakened. The giant creature turned to the common man, and did not even understand what was going on, because in his eyes, the common guy was just a target to finish him off. This defiant behavior greatly angered the Minotaur, and he was literally furious and wanted to tear his target to pieces. At the same time, Haroev understood that it was possible to borrow the selected characteristics of the target, but no more than the limit of the initial characteristics. A few seconds later, Xian Fan called up the system table, where it was indicated that he already had a total of 80 agility, that is, it had doubled. This event was truly joyful because he now realized that he had actually managed to use this skill for its intended purpose and was doing it quite effectively. Not understanding what was happening, the Minotaur began to scream and scream with all his might, because he was experiencing very strange feelings that had never been inherent to him before. Watching the guy's actions, the creature understood that it was this little man who did something special to him, and this affected his skills. Smiling, Xian Fan realized that he was now quite ready to fight such a strong opponent on equal terms, because he already had as many as 80 agility points. Suddenly, the monsters began to attack him again, and with a fierce movement of his hand, he tried to deal a crushing blow to an ordinary person. For the hero, this blow seemed really very slow, because now the monster did not have such serious agility as before. Before he could hit the guy, the monster missed, because in fact he was now very awkward and weak compared to the main character. The smart young man, with a slight movement of his legs, was able to jump several tens of meters up, and with the help of such a maneuver he easily dodged a serious blow. Now this fight was indeed very exciting for Xian Fan, because he was now interested in fighting. His body was truly like a feather that floated in the air, and was completely light compared to what it was before. Using the strength of his legs, the boy began to run again with all his might to make the demon lose this fight and confuse him. Turning to his opponent, the hero exclaimed at the last moment that they would go and fight to the last. The monster literally couldn't believe his eyes, because he didn't expect that an ordinary person could be as fast as this guy. Once again, a crushing attack fell on the main character, but he was easily able to dodge such a ridiculous move on the part of the mutant. As expected, the Minotaur will not be able to harm anyone anymore because he is very slow, and even an ordinary person will be able to escape from him. A few seconds later, Xian Fan began to move again in order to maneuver from the crushing attacks and achieve victory in this battle. The monster really became much slower, and the main character, with just one skill, was able to become much faster, and this is truly amazing. Meanwhile, the red-haired lady was watching everything that was happening, and was truly surprised that the student was capable of something like that. Sighing heavily, the girl realized that it was again necessary to continue the battle and finally complete it. Unexpectedly, her body began to change. These changes were recreated literally in an instant, and were extremely unexpected. Thus, the seemingly innocent lady appeared to be the thunder god, and used the body-dominant skill. With the help of this skill, she was really capable of a lot. Previously her strength left her, but now she has recovered again and is ready to complete the job to the end. Experiencing severe difficulties, the girl began to move towards the scene of the incident to help the main character in battle. At the same time, the battle continued, and the awkward Minotaur tried to harm the guy with his giant fist, which he very deftly dodged. But the monster's attempts were in vain because the young man had incredible dexterity and could literally dodge any blow. This was not difficult for him at all, because such dexterity was not inherent to a person, but for him it was a normal parameter that he used effectively. At this stage of the battle, the main character had thoughts that now this battle was taking place as if they were playing some kind of computer game. In fact, everything happened in reality, and any of the blows could be fatal for both the monster and the young man. In any case, it was necessary to continue fighting, despite the mortal danger, which is why the hero continued to dodge blows with slight movements in order to tire out his opponent. Dodging was a truly effective tactic, because in this way the enemy lost a lot of strength, and each attack was weaker than the previous one. Suddenly, Xian Fan realized that the monster had become a little faster, as if he had regained his former agility, and began to move as before. He reacted instantly. The boy began to move back, in order not to get hurt by the enemy, who at that moment had already managed to recover a little. The alarmed guy still wanted to understand what was going on, because he saw that the enemy really began to move much faster. Calling up the system table, the guy saw that he now only had 60 agility instead of 80, and this was really bad, because a whole minute had already passed, and 20 stat points had been taken away. It was really dangerous to continue the battle, because now the enemy was much stronger than the main character, and he had the advantage that his strength was many times greater. The impudent Minotaur looked straight into the boy's eyes, and was waiting for his next attack, to prevent it, and to launch a counterattack, defeating his opponent. The rage in the demon's eyes was visible to the naked eye, because he really didn't like that the young man, who was an ordinary person, was opposing him. This reaction caused Xian Fan serious concern because he saw that the enemy had regained his strength and could continue to fight. Meanwhile, the red-haired lady hurriedly wanted to arrive at the scene of the incident to provide assistance and defeat the creature. The determined lady wanted to do everything possible to resolve this conflict with the demon and finally finish him off. Fortunately, now she was ready, and asked the young man to move aside as quickly as possible. Xian Fan was really very happy about this appearance, because he was already waiting for his heroine, who was supposed to help him. Rushing in the other direction, the guy began to run away with all his might so as not to suffer from a crushing attack using lightning. Running away with all his might, the main character wanted to win by daring to enter his school and destroy it. At that same second, the demon rushed straight at the young man in order to take revenge on him for the bullying that had previously occurred in battle. But the hero had his own plan, which he wanted to bring to life, and resolutely continued to approach the monster. Getting even more angry, the demon watched the young man and wanted to counterattack him, because he literally began to hate him because an ordinary person was so cleverly running away from him. The smart guy easily slipped between the creature's legs, because the scoundrel still did not have such impressive dexterity to stop his opponent. This move was really effective against the clumsy Minotaur, because he couldn't even stop the guy who slipped between his legs. With incredible speed, the movement continued, and Xian Fan continued to maneuver using his tactics. From his speed, even the stones that were nearby began to fly into the air, because the gusts of wind from this maneuver were incredible. This kind of technique was indeed very demonstrative, and even the hero understood this, although a little showing off did not hurt in this fight. But it was impossible to hesitate, and Xian Fan continued to move on without stopping, so that the Lightning Queen would use her magic technique. The hulking giant did not even see where the man was running and did not turn towards him, because he saw another target. Oddly enough, this goal attracted the demon even more because she was female, and he wanted to take revenge on the goddess. A red-haired girl came into his field of vision, preparing to attack, and she looked really very strong. In the hands of the sorceress there were several lightning whirlwinds that hovered in the air and looked really very threatening. This technique was called a thunderous and destructive charge, which crushed any enemy who could feel this force of impact. Instantly, the goddess of lightning rushed to make a fatal attack that was supposed to destroy the insolent demon. Not understanding what was happening, the Minotaur did not even resist, because he could not see his opponent, who was moving so quickly. A moment later, the red-haired girl was able to deliver her best blow, which required a large amount of energy as well as recovery. The blow was truly impressive in power because it was actually able to disable the opponent with just one use. This attack is very surprising because it was really different from the one the main character had previously seen in the game. The goddess's power was simply impressive. The instantaneous speed of lightning was a skill that only she possesses. In fact, the hero expected this from one of the top 10 donors in the system who possess magical abilities. The Thunder Goddess indeed possessed impressive strength because she could easily defeat the monster, but she had not previously done so because she simply lacked the space to make a powerful blow. Suddenly, the girl began to lose strength and fell to the floor. The concerned young man immediately noticed this. Worried, Xian Fan wanted to know if everything was okay with the goddess and how she was feeling. It was obvious that the black-haired lady was really in a bad way, because she had just used her strongest blow. Without admitting that it was bad, the girl said that everything was really okay and she could move on her own. In fact, it was because she had used too much energy and was therefore very exhausted. Sighing with relief, the hero was really very glad that they finally finished this fight. This was indeed the case, because the goddess also understood that the fight was very difficult and lasted a considerable amount of time. As it turned out, Xian Fan was worried about one very important factor, which he really wanted to tell the goddess about. Namely, he wanted to talk about how becoming a giver is not at all what he imagined. A little embarrassed, the girl turned away and thanked the young man for such a brave and impressive act. Not expecting gratitude from the goddess, the guy felt a little uneasy, because he understood that she clearly could not praise everyone. Suddenly, a very terrible situation came into the main character's field of vision, which haunted him. Namely, the monster's hand began to fall directly on the girl, and could finish her off with just one swing. The frightened young man began to run with all his might to the lady in order to help her in such an unexpected situation. With each one he approached, and did everything possible to push the heroine away and save her from the incident. Still, they managed to avoid the attack thanks to Xian Fan, because he was able to push the red-haired girl away, and thereby saved her life. Just a little more, and the girl would have suffered serious consequences from the blow of the demon, who, fortunately, was already dead. Xian Fan could not even imagine that he would ever save the goddess of thunder. Indignant at such a daring act, the girl hit the insolent guy straight in the stomach with all her might and threw him several meters to the side. Not understanding anything, the hero crashed into a concrete wall, and with his body he destroyed it, causing it to burst at the seams. The blow was truly impressive in strength, and from it, the young man's eyes even darkened, because the goddess was really strong. Unexpectedly, the red-haired woman began to come closer, as if she wanted to finish off the guy, leaving him no chance to survive. Grabbing it, the girl wanted an explanation for the situation that had just happened. Using her divine power, the stranger lifted the young man off the ground with both hands and demanded an explanation from him. Confused, Xian Fan also did not understand what was happening, because he had no idea why the girl could be offended by him. Getting even more alarmed, the guy shouted that you shouldn't treat your savior like that, and you need to be more polite. As it turned out, the goddess believed that the guy just wanted to get acquainted in this way, and she did not yet know that he wanted to save her from the demon. At that very second, the young man decided to tell her that even in the game, if they help her, she still doesn't know what to do, which is why he wanted to find out why in life she is completely different. Confused, the goddess did not even know what to answer, and she simply remained silent, standing opposite the main character. Unexpectedly, the girl began to be grabbed by a demon who was behind and wished death to everyone present in this room. The impudent creature took the girl right by the skin on her back, and did not spare her, because the creature had previously suffered irreparable harm to its health. Realizing everything that was happening, the goddess realized that she was too careless, which is why this happened. The enraged demon continued to look at the couple, and wanted to separate them, because he first wanted to finish off the goddess, and then an ordinary person named Xian Fan. The building gradually began to collapse, and stones from the ceiling began to fall to the floor, thereby frightening the monster and preventing it from continuing its attack. From the many stones that fell, the Minotaur was crushed by a huge boulder. He could not move, and only screamed in pain. Meanwhile, the main character began to feel very bad. He was very dizzy, and he felt absolutely powerless. Having fallen to the floor, the young man could not even get up, and gradually lost consciousness, not knowing what was happening to him. The goddess tried to wake him up, but she didn't succeed at all, which is why she wanted to call someone else for help, or find a cure. The guy's condition really made the girl worry, because she didn't know what diseases a person like him could have. The young man continued to be on the floor and showed no signs of life. It seemed that he was not even breathing. Some time later, the goddess decided to fly away to get medicine in order to save Xian Fan, who was still lying unconscious. Suddenly, he started receiving notifications that his level had been increased by 20 points. This immediately brought the guy to his senses, because he felt that the system was sending him new notifications. Of course, this immediately caused some concern, but the young man realized the situation he was in and quickly came to his senses. Looking around, he saw only a dead monster, and the fact that the goddess next to him was no longer there. Sighing heavily, the boy realized that he had risen 20 levels thanks to the fact that he was credited with killing the monster. Turning his head to the side, the hero still wanted to find out what happened to the demon with whom they had recently fought. The disfigured creature lay nearby, lifeless, because it was completely defeated. As soon as the guy's gaze fixed on the Minotaur, he immediately began to disappear, as if he was gradually evaporating. After which, the guy received a message from the system, which indicated that he had 20 points of unallocated characteristics available. By clicking on the gift, the boy saw that he was given a gift in the form of the gift of the Golden King, and also 10 stat points were added, and in addition, he acquired a random skill. Such a gift from the system was really not bad, because it seemed that every 10 levels he had a chance to receive such a reward. Looking at the table with characteristics, Xian Fan could not understand what he should choose in order to upgrade. There was also a choice about which gift was better to receive, because it was possible to receive a gift set from the Evil King. It sounded very mysterious, because the gift itself had unknown contents. But still, characteristics plus 10 are standard and realistic. If you add a set to agility, the effect will immediately appear, but throwing all the characteristics into agility is also a good option. Xian Fan's random skill was questionable, because he didn't know what specific skill he would come across and whether it would really be useful to him. He could get an unadapted skill or a skill with no growth opportunity, even if it looks like he can get an offensive skill. In fact, she won't allow him to get a group of skills, making it completely pointless. Due to the complexity of this choice, the hero realized that he should wait a little and think carefully before pumping up any skill. He immediately removed the table with the skills, because he realized that the time had not yet come to collect his well-deserved prize. Suddenly, Xian noticed that an unfamiliar object appeared behind him, which had not been in that place before. It turned out that it was an unusual blue crystal that literally levitated in the air and sparkled very brightly. With surprise, the hero began to stretch out his hands in order to grab the unknown artifact and take a good look at it. Although the young man could not understand what it was, it really aroused his incredible interest. Unexpectedly, someone behind exclaimed that this thing is called a monster core, and this core is also quite rare. In fact, this thing was really very rare, so not everyone could get it. The heroine was really very glad that she saw the guy, because she thought that he had already died. The concerned teacher also ran up to the hero because she wanted to know if everything was okay with him and if he was hurt. The woman immediately rushed into his arms because she was grateful that he saved her. As it turned out, the teacher squeezed his head so quickly that she almost strangled him, and he barely got out of the hug, after which he said so. If something happened to her student, she would not be able to explain it to his family as a class teacher. This upset the girl very much, because the student was on the verge of life and death. Feeling awkward, the hero exclaimed that everything was fine after all, and nothing serious had happened to him. Looking at the teacher, he asked her to stop crying, because there was no point in it, because everything was already in order. The determined heroine immediately exclaimed that they should leave as quickly as possible, because they had absolutely no time to talk. Turning around, Xian Fan wanted to know where they needed to go, because the battle was already over. It turned out that they needed to go to a newly built building, a new training camp for donors. Hearing this, the teacher immediately became indignant because she first wanted to go and take a bath after such a difficult day. The hero also needed to warn his parents, otherwise they would be very worried. The goddess immediately began to explain that as soon as they become donors, they are immediately entered into the register. The specialist will inform their families and provide them with benefits and agreements. So no one would worry about them anyway, and the goddess insisted that it was necessary to contact the training camp as quickly as possible. The tired couple could not believe what they heard, because they were very exhausted and wanted to rest at least a little. Some time later, events continued to occur near the school building. The woman and the hero were heading to the car that was supposed to take them to the training camp. The worried teacher asked Xian Fan to take care of her from today, because she was very worried about the consequences that could occur as a result of gaining powers. The students nearby began shouting for the teacher to quickly return to them so that she could continue teaching them. But it was unknown whether they would return in the near future, because now they are special people with special abilities. People from the car had already started shouting for them to hurry up, because they had to move out soon. Hurrying up, the teacher and the guy began to climb into the car in order to go to the training camp. In fact, it was an ambulance that began to take them to their destination at incredible speed. Feeling very tired, the teacher literally could not sit still and began to cuddle up to Xian Fan. A few seconds later, feeling powerless, the woman fell asleep, and she was quite comfortable, because she was leaning on the guy all the time. This turn of events confused the young man a little, because he did not expect the woman to behave this way. Suddenly, the smart guy drew attention to another important detail, namely, how the goddess of thunder watched them and was outraged by such defiant behavior. Deciding to talk to the goddess, the hero said that the news said that every donor has a pleasant opportunity to take advantage of benefits and get their own living space. The red-haired girl could not understand why, in this case, he was asking about this. As it turned out, the hero was only planning his future in advance, which is why he was interested in such an important issue. But this really surprised the heroine, because in her opinion, donors should be interested in their abilities, and he is the only one interested in money and housing. Sighing heavily, the young man decided to think carefully about this issue in order to understand what his plans for the future were. After all, in fact, the four of us can be completely different. At first he himself thought, why should he study at this damned school? Suddenly, the teacher replied that studying is necessary in order to contribute to the development of society and to be useful to someone. The woman had a goal in life to study well, and then work hard, and only then would it be possible to achieve some success. The goddess really didn't like these words, and she stopped listening to the teacher's boring stories. The young man also did not take this very seriously, because now such lies would not work on him. Confused, the teacher in this case wanted to ask the guy why they were still studying. Xian Fan believed that first they study, then graduate from school, then look for work, earn money and live the life they like. Closing his eyes, the boy also added that it is also important to pursue your dream. Surprised by this statement, the woman wanted to know what his dream was in this case. After thinking a little, the boy decided to approach this issue responsibly and understand what kind of dream he had. After a few minutes, he exclaimed that he would like to live together where he could eat whatever he wanted without having to work. And also, lie back and relax, but still earn a lot of money and be incredibly rich. Literally do whatever your heart desires, every day, and no one will make a single comment about it. You can even become a harmless person and then end your life in this repeating cycle. According to the goddess, this dream was indeed very childish, and the main character should be at least a little more serious. As it turned out, the teacher had the same dream as Xian Fan, but this really surprised the heroine very much, because she did not expect that a woman could have the same opinion as a young guy. They already understood everything a long time ago. The dream of being useful to other people was imposed on them, and then they realized that it was simply pointless. Luckily, they were now friends and could share their thoughts and trust with each other. A little embarrassed, Lady was actually also very happy that they had finally become friends and shared the same concept of life. Now the teacher has begun to wonder, since they have become donors, whether they will be able to take advantage of benefits and get their own living space. The The goddess again did not like this question, and she could not understand whether these new donors really had no other goals. Fortunately, they had a goal, and it was that in the future they would live a peaceful and calm life. And now no one can say that their life is meaningless, because they have a main goal in their life. Realizing that this was such a meaningless goal, the red-haired lady became even angrier. And yet she decided to answer such a serious question, and told the couple that they would receive all the benefits and living space. This answer was indeed satisfactory, and the student and teacher exclaimed that they were very happy about this. But also, as givers, they must be responsible for other people and their lives. The couple clearly did not expect this. They did not know that they would need to save a bunch of human lives and be responsible for them. The woman literally started screaming that all donors are vile and are trash in human society. Such statements were clearly not beneficial for the overall impression of this conversation, so the goddess was no longer going to talk to them. Suddenly, something terrible happened and the car began to wobble incredibly hard. Everyone was shocked because no one understood what was happening outside the car, because it was skidding from side to side. The speed of movement increased every second, and the car moved forward without stopping. Gathering her strength, the goddess shouted that no one should dare move, and she would go to make sure that everything was in order. Knocking on the driver's cabin, the girl asked him to open the hatch to see what was happening outside. The hatches on the roof of the car immediately opened, and it was possible to look through them to see what was happening there. Having taken off, the goddess found herself on the roof, and looking around, she began to examine the area. The movement of the car was so fast that the young man even fell to the floor and hit his head hard. The goddess was not at all worried about such fast movement, and she continued to observe the area to make sure that everything was normal. The slightly alarmed girl shouted for the impudent girl to leave here, because while she was here, she shouldn't even think about stealing someone. Only the silhouette of the girl was visible, which was also in the air. As it turned out, she just wanted to achieve the goal, but she met a cruel goddess, such as the goddess of thunder. This was probably another awakened girl who also had superpowers and could levitate and fly. The goddess of thunder really did not like this event, and she again shouted for the girl to leave here as quickly as possible. The goddess floating in the air wanted it that way, but if she returned with nothing, they would grumble at her. The brazen lady also noticed that the thunder goddess was injured, and she felt that if they fought, the girl who arrived would win. The red-haired lady exclaimed that because she was injured, she could not be like her past self, and could not control her powers well, which is why she could accidentally kill someone. The stranger actually admitted that every time she met the thunder goddess, she was truly impressive with her strength. But not now, because at the moment she was injured and could not pose such serious competition. The determined goddess began to use her superpowers and summoned lightning, with which she wanted to scare her opponent. Watching each other, the rivals waited to see who would launch their attack first, and thereby begin the duel. The people sitting in the car, meanwhile, did not understand what was happening outside, because absolutely nothing was visible. The alarmed teacher suggested that perhaps the goddess would now shoot lightning again. Xian Fan instantly realized that this would be a long-distance fight. Among the donors, a very small number could develop their abilities to such a level. Close combat and long range, both types of combat have no weak points. The admiring young man watched the goddess, who was preparing for battle, and using her magical abilities. But suddenly, the teacher did not like it, and she began to be jealous, which is why the young man closed his eyes, and asked him not to look at it. Meanwhile, the fight continued, and the goddess of thunder shouted to the stranger to get out of here as soon as possible and not force her to attack. The pink-haired girl, as it turned out, also has her own principles, which is why she was not going to leave. After all, if she leaves, as the goddess asks, then she will not be able to explain this to her superiors. Using her magical abilities, the goddess of thunder began to use super strong techniques in order to show her true strength. A stream of thunder began to emerge from the heroine's hand, which rushed straight at the enemy that was in the air. A huge core consisting of lightning was approaching the scoundrel who dared to attempt the lives of ordinary people. The rushing attack was incredibly fast, and almost reached its target, giving her no chance to dodge. Thus, after a few seconds, the attack overtook its target and hit her straight in the body. For the girl it was truly unpredictable, because she expected that the enemy would still be able to dodge. The strike continued to move, and it overtook the clouds, after which the lightning ball hit them. As soon as the impact dissipated, it was clear that there was no one else on the way to impede their movement, and they could continue moving towards the training camp. Looking around, the goddess of thunder could not see her opponent. It seemed that the stranger had simply disappeared. Feeling very anxious, the teacher assumed that it was a fight between two donors. But the smart young man knew that this was the final strike of the goddess from a long distance, a laser of focused energy to smash the skies, which is called the humanoid cannon. Such an unusual name really surprised even the woman, and she did not understand whether such a blow really existed. Unexpectedly, the goddess turned to the young man and asked him to shut up, because these names of strikes were made up by people from the gaming company, and such names do not exist at all, which is why she ordered not to distract her and not let her lose concentration. This statement really upset the young man, because he thought that he understood at least a little about the attacks of the goddess. Turning to the boy, the woman began to say that it doesn't matter, and let them fight, and they will just sit here and enjoy the show. For them, this was indeed a good alternative, because in fact they could not fight on equal terms with such strong opponents. Meanwhile, the battle continued, and the goddess of thunder noticed that the enemy had reappeared and was very nearby. The mysterious girl was floating in the air again, and was very close. It seemed that she was about to attack. Addressing the goddess of thunder, the stranger called her Xiao Sanino, and she also suggested that she was clearly not going to do her any favors. This was indeed the case, because Xiao Sanino was determined and wanted to complete the battle she had started. In fact, the enemy believed that such tactics were ineffective, because too much force was used against her every time. It turned out that the enemy had the ability to steal new powers from her enemies, and the goddess of thunder immediately found out about this. The stranger was truly amazed by such insight, but was not surprised that Xiao Sanino immediately knew about it. In fact, in order to defeat the goddess, the stranger killed many elements walking around to find a counter-ability for her. And fortunately for the enemy, she still managed to find an ability that could counter thunder abilities. The situation was now really difficult and the car gradually began to stop because it was now faulty. Worried, Xiao Sayunino could not understand what was going on. Her veteran rival did not know how to do anything like that. Feeling something was wrong, the heroes and the teacher were also in shock because they did not know what was happening outside, and the car stopped abruptly. The goddess of thunder wanted to know what her opponent was planning to do. The scoundrel continued to attack. She used all her strength to land a crushing blow right on the car. Feeling this, Xiao Sanino instantly took action and was determined. Jumped several tens of meters up, she tried to stop the enemy and launch a counterattack. Gathering all her power, the stranger continued to act, and was going to destroy her opponent with one blow. Fortunately, she did not succeed, because the goddess was so smart that she was able to dodge such a strong attack. The attack was supposed to hit the target, which was located not far from the car. The force of the blow was truly impressive, because with just one blow, the enemy was able to destroy the asphalt on which the huge car was driving. The sharp impact made the people inside the car fall to the floor because the blast wave was really very strong. The young man again felt something was wrong, and hoped that everything would be okay, because it seemed that the attack was much stronger than before. The determined goddess wanted to find out from her rival why she was here, because earlier she thought that the stranger was here to steal people. Realizing the complexity of the situation, Xiao Sanino assumed that the scoundrel wanted to kill these people. In fact, the scoundrel named Ernano believed in her abilities because Xiao Sanino would be able to interfere with her. In addition, it would deplete her stamina, which is the best method to defeat her. That is why Ernano was going to continue to attack in order to win this battle by exhausting her opponent. This tactic was truly shocking, and Xiao did not expect her opponent to be so smart and tactful in battle. Suddenly, another attack followed, which was aimed directly at the car. The goddess did not dare to leave the people and defeat her rival, so she ran with all her might to save them. With incredible speed, the girl began to run towards the ambulance to move it away from the place where the attack was flying. With the help of superhuman strength, the goddess of thunder was easily able to move the giant machine away, and thereby again saved people from the attack. Without understanding anything, Xiao Sanino saw how his rival was able to copy her own ability, and she wanted to understand how this happened. Continuing to mock the girl, Ernano shouted that no one knows, but perhaps it's all because these abilities are similar to each other. Moments later, the opponent was again preparing her attack, and gaining strength in order to deliver another blow. Worried about the lives of people, the goddess of thunder wanted to do everything possible to win, but also, she needed to dodge strong attacks to avoid being injured and survive. The smart opponent had very good tactics, and could also copy the abilities of any awakened one. This method was called the destruction method, and for Air Nano the technique was truly effective, since it could affect any opponent. Without losing strength, the scoundrel again continued her attacks, and with all her might she wanted to finish off the people, and the goddess herself. Feeling helpless, the red-haired goddess continued to watch everything that was happening, and thought about what tactics to use in order to still win. The girl was also able to evade the next attack, although it was not easy. In a few seconds, about 5 powerful attacks were used that could finish off any god they were used on. From many explosions, the car began to gradually move, because the blast waves reached it and moved from side to side. As she continued to fight, the goddess of thunder realized that Air Nano did not have the courage to go head-to-head with her, and she had already copied a bunch of strange abilities. And also, this insidious woman has a very bad character, which is why it is difficult to fight with her. The hero began to help the goddess, and shouted that when she faces a test in the game, then you need to use your brains, even if her attack cannot reach her, but the attack comes from a certain place. This is the problem, you should not fall for the tricks of your opponent. This hint really seemed very useful to Xiao Sunino, and she understood what she still needed to do in battle. Jumping sharply, the Thunder Maiden began to attack and moved towards her opponent. This unexpected attack was truly unpredictable for Air Nano, and she did not know how to proceed. The attack was carried out successfully, and the enemy did not even understand what was happening. It turned out that in some unknown way, Xiao Sunino was able to steal the drone on which the weapon was placed. The determined girl was going to finish what she started and she wanted to use the drone as a weapon. The main character was really very happy that in this way Xiao could win this fight. Having landed, the girl began to extract magical abilities from the drone, which had recently been in the air. It turned out that the drone also has magical abilities and is under the influence of magic. Suddenly, the drone collapsed, and instead of it, Xiao Sunino had in his hands the magic ball that Air Nano had previously used. This outcome of events surprised the lady, and she did not understand how it was possible to use this trick. In fact, she spent a lot of money to specifically make equipment against her, a drone with an electromagnetic gun. It is very expensive. And now the drone exploded. Because it was very expensive, Air Nano suffered huge losses. Now she wanted Xiao Sunino to compensate her for all the damage she caused by breaking the drone. Rejoicing at the victory, the girl exclaimed that when the scoundrel was thrown into a heavenly prison, she would give her another drone. But the enemy believed that this was a lie, and she would not receive any drone. After which, Air Nano mysteriously began to evaporate in order to teleport somewhere. Feeling bewildered, the goddess of thunder did not understand what was happening and where exactly her opponent was moving. It turned out that Air Nano decided to move straight into the car, where the main character was located with the teacher. The smart warrior knew how to fight, which is why she decided to move here to say hello to the main character. This really shocked the young man and woman, because they did not expect Air to know where they were. The girl immediately realized that Xian Fan was the same person who gave the idea to this cruel girl. The alarmed guy immediately decided to find out if she wanted to capture them after being exposed. Watching the guy, the opponent did not understand why he was so calm, because an ordinary person in his place would have already wet his pants. The young man was so calm for a reason, because he had gone through too many action RPGs, so he thinks this is a side effect. If her goal was originally to capture the targets or even kill them, then she would not have appeared here like this. But the enemy was really very smart, so everything was not as simple as the guy thought. Then he assumed that all her actions were to attract her attention, to create an opportunity for this chance. Laughing, Air Nano made it clear that this was indeed the case, and his assumption was correct. After thinking a little, the girl realized that this young man was interested in her too, so she wanted to tell him a couple of secrets. As she approached, Air began to whisper into Xian Fan's ear the secrets she wanted to tell him. These secrets really shocked the guy, because he did not expect that he would be able to hear such unexpected words. The enemy, in turn, was simply amused by this, because she thought that it would be really very funny. In bewilderment, the teacher continued to watch everything that was happening, and could not understand what would happen to them now. Meanwhile, the goddess of thunder was approaching the car and wanted to jump inside in order to save people. Having stopped, the girl wanted to find out from the enemy what she was doing here and why she was in the car. Turning around, the opponent began to laugh, and it seemed that she did not want to steal anyone at all. After which, she completely waved her hand and decided to say goodbye in order to leave the crime scene. At that same second, Air Nano literally disappeared and was nowhere to be seen. The hero continued to think about the whole situation, and did not understand what he should do next. A few hours later, events continued to occur in the car, which was moving towards the training camp. The donors watched each other closely and were perplexed, because the situation was truly impressive. Having gathered his thoughts, the young man still wanted to talk about the situation that had previously occurred. Watching the young man, the goddess decided to ask him what Air Nano told him. In turn, the boy asked a counter-question, asking who this girl was. It turned out that she was one of the givers who have the ability, but they refuse to live with ordinary people. They want to surpass, dominate, and control other people. These superhumans came together to become the rulers of this world. This kind of fact was truly shocking to ordinary people who had no idea how much power they possessed. Laughing, the hero said that it was the usual villainous speech, which includes goals and greed. And the teacher wanted to understand why they were doing all this, because it seemed to her that it was really very good for the donors to live together. But still, Xiao Sanino wanted to know what Air Nano said to Xian Fan. Angry, the hero decided to ask if he could refuse to tell her about this. Without hesitation, the goddess agreed, because he really could not talk about what was said to him. But he interacted with a dangerous creature that created risk and danger, so he must be isolated for investigation until he reports what she said. Smiling, the young man realized that this was all forced, and he would still have to talk about it. Waiting for an answer, the goddess looked intently at the guy and wanted him to tell about what happened here. In fact, Air Nano told him that they grabbed the key to close otherworldly variations, and this was a fact of reality. These words really shocked the girl, because she did not expect that something like that would be said to an ordinary person. The woman also could not believe these words, and wanted to understand whether he really said this seriously. In turn, the young man understood that this girl had no need to lie to him. Looking straight into the eyes of the goddess of thunder, the boy wanted to know if this was really true. Worried, Xiao Sanino did not know how to respond to this, and simply sat silently in thought. Bowing her head, she did not want to admit that this was indeed the case. Sighing heavily, the boy realized that this was a very insidious plan, and everything he heard became so annoying, and even they were drawn into this matter. But still, he wanted to know how the goddess would deal with them and what she would do. Suddenly, the teacher clung to the young man and said that she would protect him. Xian Fan was of course grateful for such an initiative, but he understood that even 10 people like them could not defeat the goddess of thunder. For the woman it was a duty, because she is a teacher, and this guy was her student, so she is obliged to protect him. Hugging the teacher, the hero told her not to worry, because the fact that they were still alive meant that they were safe. Turning to the goddess, the boy again decided to ask if this is really so. But Xiao Sanino didn't know this, because it was unknown what ability he had, but from the video of him casually acting, it was clear that he was unusually smart. The fact that the guy was smart really impressed the teacher, and she wanted to ask if it was really true. Because usually his exam grades were no higher than average, physical education was also average, absolutely all grades were average. The hero, in turn, did not understand why he should strain himself by working so hard. He needs to live well, pursue his hobby. This is the only way to fully enjoy his life. Meanwhile, the goddess decided to admit that they had indeed captured the key to closing the otherworldly gate. These words were truly shocking to people, and they wanted to understand what exactly the key was captured. The teacher also immediately suggested that in this case, their world could become safe, and they would probably no longer need to fight. If the otherworldly gate closes, the future could change. It could become an all-out war between humans and donors. This outcome was fatal for a person, because an ordinary commoner cannot compare in strength with God or the donor. But despite the fact that givers are born among people, because givers have abilities that are extremely strong and superior to the average person, without the invasion of an external enemy, the view on this may change, because people will not want such strong jelly deities near them. The shocked woman wanted to understand why this could happen. After all, they can all live in peace. Suddenly, the young man exclaimed that he also understood why all this would happen. No matter what the giver does or does nothing at all people will spread words of hate and influence that group. By changing their worldview and controlling the entire situation, terrible things will happen. Because the emotions of people and donors will reach the limit, and from this a war may ensue. All this will be the root cause of the beginning of a catastrophe that may happen in the future. And also, all this can happen due to some individuals who will deliberately influence people's thoughts. The deities are indeed much stronger, which is why they will most likely win this war, despite the fact that humanity has an army and many types of weapons. An ordinary person will never be able to resist God, which is why the war will be swift and deadly. This is why the invasion of monsters from other worlds becomes a reason for the donors to protect other people. People can also need givers. Givers can also protect people in order to maintain space for survival. Still, the young man could not understand why that beauty told him about this. After thinking a little, the girl suggested that whether it was them or these people, in order to stabilize society, a lot of strength was needed. And the side of the new donor is equated with a change in power, which is why both sides are madly capturing new bearers, causing new violent upheavals. Then the heroes realized that they had placed cameras everywhere, worrying about the appearance of the donor, so that they could quickly arrive when one of them awakens. This assumption was indeed true, which is why the power of their side suppresses the monsters, but this time, the villains may have other plans. Realizing that this plan could be used right now, the goddess immediately became alarmed and realized that she needed to act. I pumped the driver so that he would start the engine. The girl ordered him to drive to the collection point very quickly. This behavior was really strange for people, because they did not understand what such a terrible thing could happen right now at the gathering place. With incredible speed, the car continued to move. Although it was on the verge of breakdown, it almost reached its destination. Fortunately, a few minutes later, they finally reached the gathering place. Not far from the arrival point, there was an unknown person wearing a mask. The goddess opened the door and exclaimed that her mission to accompany people had been completed. They will now have to follow a guide to get to the check-in area. The goddess of thunder herself began to quickly run away to help the rest of the people and protect them. The mysterious man was an escort, and he asked people to follow him. Getting out of the car, the young man and woman began to follow the man who was leading them. Gradually they reached a gigantic building, which was truly amazing in its height. Previously, the teacher could only see this place in the news and nowhere else. The enterprising boy, meanwhile, wanted to ask the escort if they would receive money and a house after registration. After registering, the new donors will complete a certification test, then are distributed to different schools to begin studying and training, and of course, the donors' family members will be moved to the distribution house, stay to begin, and resources will also be issued on time. These words caused excitement among the young men, because he could not imagine that they would even have to study and train here. The woman did not like this attitude, and she hit the guy with all her might, because he should love to study. In fact, the training program was created so that the giver could understand his ability, and when he encountered danger, he would be able to cope with it. Since each donor has a duty to protect ordinary citizens, the donors receive money in exchange, and there is no need to worry about housing either. The smart guy again decided to clarify how much money he could get if he saved people. The question amused the attendant, and he did not know what to answer. Angry, the woman shouted that he was so young, and all he thought about was money, and he shouldn't do that. That is why if anyone is asking, it should be her, which is why the teacher now decided to ask how much money they will receive. The amount of money, as it turned out, depends on the given class of the donor. Now the young man realized that now the woman is not his teacher, and can even become his classmate. It was indeed true because both of them would be the new generation rookies. From this moment on, the woman will no longer be able to teach him from the position of a teacher, since she is his classmate. This outcome made the woman worry because once she became a teacher, she would be a teacher forever. With tears in her eyes, she started screaming that she didn't want to be a classmate, but wanted to be a teacher, because she was a teacher. Laughing, the hero began to say that he understood everything, but would think about it. Meanwhile, events continued to happen in the conference room. The goddess of thunder was also present at the meeting, and was waiting for the information that they wanted to notify her about. The meeting began, and first of all, it was necessary to report on the situation in each region. In the Shundu region, 30 new donors were discovered, 25 were successfully escorted, 2 were dead, and the Shadow Heart organization kidnapped 3. Xianwan region has discovered 50 new donors, successfully escorted 30, 15 are dead, and the Shadow Heart organization has kidnapped 5. The Shandu and Wujianwan regions are the central regions of their country. Even with so many people, they still allow the Shadow Heart to kidnap people. Another man had 29 people in his region, only 1 died, and no one was kidnapped. If it weren't for that case 10 years ago, the Shadow Hearts company would not have been able to do so many things in the shadows. This whole situation has already become a challenge to humanity and the established lifestyle of donors. After these words, all the deities began to remain silent, because they understood that there was no point in discussing this. One of the deities decided to ask Xiao Sanino what about her region. Without a doubt, the girl said that 28 new donors were discovered in her Donghai region, and 28 were also escorted. Also, people around were interested in whether there were any clues about the child of disasters that should appear in the Donghai region, according to Mr. Seer. The girl said that at the moment no one has been found with such potential, and because they are still in the evaluation stage, it was necessary to select candidates as carefully as possible, because this is an important matter, and they must find this person quickly. None of them could be careless, because until a person with such potential was found, only disaster would happen in the city. At the same time, the young man and Yuni Sayasani were moving around the building, where they were accompanied by a mysterious man. The journey was indeed very long, and the couple was already very tired. Fortunately, after quite a long journey, they finally reached their destination. The kind man asked them to go inside the room. Concerned people did not understand what could be behind the door, and were afraid to enter there. Yuni Sayasani decided to omit her first student because she thought it would be a good idea. Very worried, the young man finally decided to show courage and actually go first into the room. Entering the door, he looked around to understand what was in the room. Realizing that the student might be in danger, the former teacher also began to run towards the entrance. Suddenly, the door closed, and together they found themselves in a strange room. They were surrounded by different people who looked quite strange in comparison. It is likely that the people around them were also awakened and possessed magical abilities. There were indeed a very large number of people in the room, and they all looked completely different. Looking around, Xian Fan realized that he hated this feeling of having a bunch of people looking at you. After this procedure, he would just like to go home and play video games. Meanwhile, the boy noticed that the 2 girls were communicating with each other very emotionally. They communicated with abilities, each of them wanted to find out what abilities they possess. One of the girls decided to tell them that she has a rather unusual ability, and she can already use it. Using her hands, the stranger began to create magical light, and exclaimed that this was her ability. After which, she made the pen levitate, although she didn't know when she received the blessing, but she tried to attract things nearby to her, then this flew towards her. The interlocutor also wanted to try to make the pen fly, which is why she asked to try to do the same. But unfortunately, the pen in her hands never took off, and remained lying on her hand. It really looked funny, because the interlocutor could not yet understand what abilities she had. I observed all the people who were present here. The hero and the woman felt really very awkward. Suddenly, a man approached them and asked if they had really arrived for registration too. Coming closer, Xian Fan said that this was indeed the case. It turned out that this time the Donghai region has 28 donors, so they were the last, and now everything is in place. From now on they will be comrades. The kind guy extended his hand to say hello and said that his name was Lutian Ming. Coming a little closer, Yuni Zayasani revealed that she was Xian Fan's former teacher. This behavior on the part of the woman caused a little discomfort in the hero. Watching Lutian Ming, Xian Fan realized that this guy was indeed very sociable, and also bright in appearance. This young man really looked like the main character of some manga. But the more such people there are, the better, because the boy can calmly relax and enjoy his life. Extending his hand, Xian Fan also decided to introduce himself in order to get to know the guy. After which, they kindly shook hands as a sign of acquaintance. Meanwhile, a man appeared on the TV screen and apologized to the ladies and gentlemen for the wait. The stranger congratulated everyone in this room because from now on they would live a completely different life. Also, everyone present was asked to go to the appropriate registration room, the number corresponding to the order in which they arrived here. Staff will record everyone's information and their plans for the future. The news was really great, and Lu Tianming was probably happy about it. Noticing the reaction of the main character, Yuni Shasani decided to contact him to ask if everything was okay. A little embarrassed, the guy said that everything was fine, and he was just tired. Some time later, an attendant came in with a list of those present and began to tell us which room to move into. Number 1 was immediately invited and was supposed to move in first. The red-haired girl was number 1 and she immediately entered her room. Number 2 and number 3 were invited next, and they were supposed to live together. After a few tens of minutes, number 27 was supposed to enter the room. Suddenly, Yuni Shasani decided to stop him. I address him as a student. Not understanding anything, the hero decided to turn to ask what was the matter. It turned out that in fact, the former teacher just wanted to wish him good luck and also wanted him to do well in battle. Laughing, the guy was shocked by such a reaction, because these were not exams or interviews. Sighing heavily, the teacher admitted that the atmosphere made her think it was an interview. In fact, she had been a teacher for so long that she was used to taking exams from others, but she herself had not taken an exam for 100 years. The smart young man wished good luck to her too, because now she was a simple student. Even if this was true, Yuni Zayasani was still very upset by this fact. In fact, the hero had a feeling that after the end of their relationship as a student and a teacher, she would sometimes behave like an adult, and the rest of the time like a child. The changes in her character were indeed very significant, and Xian Fan noticed them easily. Still, they decided to say goodbye, because they were supposed to see each other a little later. Walking along the corridor, the main character began to look for his room in order to move into it. Looking around, he could not understand what they were up to, because registration, introduction, everything was very difficult. Suddenly, someone addressed the hero, telling him that number 27 should go to the 11th room on the right. Hearing this, Xian Fan immediately headed there to settle into his brand new apartment. Entering the room, the hero discovered fairly good conditions in which he was to live in the future. The door was automatically closed behind him, and now he had to be in this room. Suddenly, a hologram appeared in front of the boy, which scared him a little. As it turned out, this holographic girl was an artificial intelligence, as well as its assistant named Ami-chan. The benevolent artificial intelligence was going to provide him with everything he needed, which is why she asked him to sit down. Sitting on the bed, Xian Fan wanted to know, you need to register and enter information, but why can't you just fill out the form, because this whole procedure is really very complicated. The artificial intelligence explained that this was a specially designed service association of donors throughout the country for each generation of newcomers, so that they could be prepared physically. Because they are all ordinary people who suddenly have small changes in their lives, and this can become endless opportunities for the giver, which can later be the reason for mental, spiritual and physical problems, and they can even take the wrong path. The smart guy immediately realized that people like Air Nano were not on the wrong path. It was because of this that Ami-chan appeared to help newcomers like Xian Fan. In this case, the young man understood that he would not have any problems with learning, because he thought that everything was cool enough, because of which he just wanted to quickly fill out the form. Suddenly, Ami-chan decided to approach the boy to study his condition. Fortunately, his vitals were normal, he was calm, his pulse was normal, his temperature was normal, his physiological parameters were very good. The psychological age was also much higher than that of the others. Continuing to listen to the artificial intelligence, the hero thanked her for her praise. But still, Ami-chan could not understand one thing, why his academic and physiological grades in this case were completely ordinary. This question extremely confused the hero, and he shouted that this was because of his desire, and in general, this did not apply to Ami-chan. This answer really amused the girl, and she wanted to tell him something more, namely, about the benefits and responsibilities that donors have. Winking at the boy, the artificial intelligence asked what he wanted to know first. First of all, he wanted to know about the benefits, and asked if it was true that he would have a monthly salary. This was indeed the case, and not only that, the donor's family could live in the entire mansion. And, depending on the donor's performance, they will be able to receive even more resources and priority benefits. The news was really great because the boy understood that this way he could get the latest games and console, an endless amount of games and data, as well as a high-end computer. For Ami-chan, these questions were truly unusual, because among the other donors, this guy today only kept asking about benefits and funds. The rest of the people were thinking about how to find out their abilities and become stronger. Leaning back on the chairs, the boy now wanted to know when he would be able to get a house and cash out his salary. After all, from now on, he can simply do nothing, receive a salary, relax and live a quiet life. But this was not so. Artificial intelligence explained to him that the benefits of donors come from the country's taxes. Donors are considered special civil servants of the country. Since he receives money, he needs to perform some duties. In this case, Xian Fan asked him not to tell him that he would again have to protect people, fight monsters, and so on. Well, that was also wrong. Only after training and evaluation, those with strong abilities will be given combat duties. And you, who cannot fight, will be assigned to easier work in the shadows. In this case, it meant that the weak and those who could not fight should not go and fight against these monsters. This question was really strange for artificial intelligence, and a little confused. Ami-chan answered that it was indeed so. Xian Fan decided to think a little about the reward system and his position in the future. According to what she told him, the otherworldly gate may be closed. At the moment the otherworldly gate is still open, so that people and donors can live in harmony. And those who will be very strong, and will fight monsters. In turn, those whose normal abilities do not cause problems will be able to live and spend money in peace. The young man thus realized that if this is so, then he just needs to be not outstanding, and not show his strength, and then relax for the rest of his life. Deciding to turn to the system, he said that after accepting the gift, he adapted quite well, and still decided to talk about home. Ami-chan said that he would still have to go through a simple registration, which is why the girl decided to find out, after receiving the gift, what kind of ability he had acquired in this case. I understand that I can't just talk about it. He knew that he shouldn't casually give out details in case his ability was super strong and would not allow him to live an ordinary life. Shaking his head, Xian Fan told the system that he didn't know because he didn't feel anything. The system asked him not to worry, because whether it is external or internal abilities, not everyone can feel it at the same moment. After training and under the guidance of an instructor, he will be able to slowly develop his ability. Suddenly, there was a strong explosion, and this greatly surprised those present in this building. Ami-chan immediately shouted that an otherworldly alarm had begun. This alarm began because otherworldly monsters invaded their base. The young man could not even imagine that this was even possible. In any case, in this situation, it was necessary to remain calm, because they have already informed the combat members to arrive quickly, which is why it is necessary to stay in this room. Explosions and terrifying sounds were heard again, shocking those present in the room. Experiencing a strong feeling of anxiety, the young man wanted to understand what it was all about. Ami said that the entrance was blocked. It would take some time for the people outside to get inside. This outcome of events caused Xian Fan to panic even more, because he had only just arrived at his home, and some troubles had already arisen. Turning to the hero, the system ordered him to quickly run to the saving path and hurry up. The boy immediately began to run, because he understood that he needed to escape as quickly as possible. Watching the young man, Ami-chan began to smile, because it was not just like that. Suddenly, she exclaimed that the first stage of the test would begin right now. While running away, the hero realized that this was an obvious trap, and the acting of this artificial intelligence was too deliberate. That's why he guessed that they wanted to test him, and discover their awakened abilities, and at the same time find out their real abilities. This test was indeed problematic, but the trap was also obvious, which is why the guy could not do anything. In any case, he didn't want to be a lab rat and pay attention to other people, which meant he was going to do his best to remain nondescript. With all his strength he continued to run towards the exit in order to escape. Meanwhile, everything that was happening was monitored from the surveillance room, because there were a lot of cameras installed around the perimeter of the entire building. Xiao Sunino was also present here and monitored the test. The subordinates grouped this new batch of donors into 5 rooms and sent them to different locations. In this case, The girl was also interested in another question, whether the coordinates of the otherworldly gates had been discovered. Luckily, they were easily detected as they targeted a couple of weak energy reactions from the otherworldly gates to make sure it didn't reach life-threatening levels of danger. The lady also wanted to know what about the training of emergency combat members. At the moment, all the fighters were prepared and were in positions. If something happens, as soon as the order is issued, the monsters will immediately attack them. This test was truly difficult, but Xiao Sunino wanted to do her best to test new technologies. She also ordered the teleportation of low-level and otherworldly gates that were supposed to appear in the city to the battlefield. By pressing one button, everything was ready and the loading of coordinates began. Meanwhile, the young man continued to run, and thought about what he should do, because there were definitely several traps outside that were waiting only for him. He didn't know if he should hide inside, slowly waiting for it all to end. Suddenly, someone shouted nearby that they were under attack. Xian Fan immediately realized that it was the teacher who was shouting, who was probably in danger. In an instant, he began to run towards her, because he understood that the woman had fallen for this trap, and this would be a problem for him. As soon as he reached the scene of the incident, he saw something very terrible. Namely, that the 4 girls were surrounded by enemies who were about to attack them. The angry monsters were ready to fight the innocent girls and do everything possible to defeat them. None of those in this room understood what was happening or what to do. All the monsters literally ran into one room in a few seconds, and the girls began to panic. Several monsters began to attack to neutralize the unworthy candidates. This was noticed by one of the girls who was standing in the center of the room, but she was ready to fight. With all her strength, the lady kicked her foot right at the goblin who wanted to attack her. The force of the blow was truly impressive, because with just one powerful blow she was able to neutralize the goblin. Turning around, the girl felt that there were still other enemies nearby. And this was really so, because the goblin behind also wanted to attack her. But she was ready for this attack too, and was easily able to hit him with her legs and temporarily neutralize him. The other rascals also continued their attack and were about to attack the innocent girls who were very afraid of them. The alarmed ladies literally began to cry and did not know what to do. Fortunately, Lu Tianming was nearby, who was able to help in such a difficult situation, and neutralized one of the monsters. The young man was really quite strong, and having hit the monster, he was rendered unconscious. The blow was so strong that the monster flew several tens of meters to the side and crashed into a wall. The brave boy also decided to turn to the girls to ask if everything was okay with them. As it turned out, a huge number of monsters had emerged from the portal, and they were about to attack again. The furious creatures wanted to fight and test the strength of the newcomers who dared to call themselves awakened. Unexpectedly, the main character noticed that a girl was being bullied not far from him. It was his teacher who was being beaten by goblins. The woman was literally begging for Xian Fan's student to save her. Fearing the consequences, the young man began to act, because he understood that the teacher needed help as soon as possible. The villains continued to mock the poor girl and beat her. At that very second, Xian Fan realized that since there were monsters here, he could continue to use the skills of the system, increasing the characteristics most convenient for meeting danger. Using the system, Xian borrowed agility in order to become much faster and resist in a fight. Fortunately, he also understood that this goblin bone heat was much higher than that of the teacher, but it was still small when compared to him. Rather, it was similar to the characteristics of children. The brave warrior was ready to fight because he now had a whopping 68 agility points. Suddenly, the system warned him that the skill of stealing agility can only be used once a day, and there is no other choice. If he could use it an unlimited number of times, because there are so many goblins here, it would be better than cheating. Continuing to observe the abuse of the woman, the hero nevertheless decided to act. Approaching one of the goblins, the boy decided to resist. The brave warrior struck with all his might the villain who dared to touch his teacher. This goblin was really young, so the young man was able to defeat him easily. The goblins hunted their prey, surrounding them and attacking them, but alone they were no stronger than a berserker child. Another scoundrel began to attack the woman, and Xian Fan immediately noticed this. With all his strength, he decided to hit this goblin, who was trying to make an attempt on the life of Yuni Shasani. Lying on the floor, the woman saw that now she was finally saved and was not in danger. The good-natured guy decided to extend his hand to help the woman get back on her feet. But as a sign of gratitude, she decided to kiss her student, because she was very happy about her salvation. This outcome of the battle was truly unexpected for Xian Fan because he did not expect to receive a kiss as a sign of gratitude. Meanwhile, the goblins continued to surround them and watched as the student and teacher hugged. All these events were observed from the video surveillance room, using cameras. One of the wards reported that candidate 27, Xian Fan, is now showing speed far beyond human abilities. Body-enhancing abilities or acceleration abilities have been discovered. The total speed exceeded 25 meters per second. For the goddess of thunder, this figure was too low, because right now he had her completely ordinary. The report was thus completed and they continued to observe. At the same time, the heroes asked the teacher to quickly leave here, because now was not the time for gratitude, and they rather needed to leave this place. Looking around, Xian Fan noticed that many goblins were even more furious and they began to attack. The enraged creatures were ready to fight to the last, because they saw that some of their brothers in arms had been killed. The smart guy asked everyone not to fight these monsters anymore. Pointing to the door, he ordered everyone to hide there so that they could not be attacked. Taking the teacher's hand, he also planned to go to that place in order to avoid the attack of the goblins. Everyone present in the room also began to run to safety because for them the goblins were indeed very dangerous. In turn, the woman did not understand why they did not run to the doors, because they should run away from this place. The main character knew that there were a lot of goblins here. If they were surrounded, they would die immediately. This passage is really very small. They only need to deal with 2 or 3 goblins and that's it, and then they can avoid having to deal with a lot of goblins at once. Yuni Zayasani suddenly felt that the young man became more responsible. This was not like him, because he was always bored and gave up, no matter what happened. The furious creatures continued their attack. One of the goblins was ready to attack directly from behind. But fortunately, Xian was much stronger than the villains and was easily able to finish off another goblin. A little more and they should have reached their destination. Suddenly, the small passage in front of them closed, preventing them from entering. This turn of events was truly surprising for them, because they did not understand how this was possible. Because a small hole in the wall turned into a giant portal from which monsters were now supposed to appear. The goblins behind were also watching the people fleeing, and wanted to finish them off. One of the girls accidentally fell to the floor, and the goblins instantly began to attack her, because they saw that she was helpless. Out of hopelessness, the girl began to cry because she did not know what to do. Suddenly, Lu Tianming began to use his magical abilities that appeared in him. It was a fire ability with which he had to save an innocent girl. The enraged young man began to move towards his opponents in order to finish them all off. The spectacle was truly amazing, because it is not every day that you see an ordinary person awaken the ability to control fire. Lu Tianming continued to move towards the monster, and, raising his hand towards it, was about to attack it. Feeling intense rage, he grabbed the monster right by the neck. Thus, he caught several monsters with his own hands and decided to take action. Concentrating his power in his hands, Lu Tian began to use it on the villains, and thus caused them to burn. The skill actually had an unusually powerful effect because it caused the creatures to burn instantly. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the observation room. One of the wards exclaimed that candidate number 12 Lu Tianming has fire abilities. The initial temperature is 2000 degrees. This phenomenon had to be reported to the headquarters because it was the sporing potential of F. As it turned out, Xiao Sanino was not impressed with this ability, but her ward began to insist that using a temperature of 2000 degrees, metal could be melted. Confused, the girl said that he could not be the same as number 27, and that she should look at his skin. His skin was similar to that of an ordinary person, making this skill completely unimpressive. Using his abilities greatly traumatized Lu Tianming because his body was surrounded by fire, and after using his fire abilities, he received serious burns due to the extreme temperature. The students couldn't believe their eyes and wanted to understand how this happened. The goddess of thunder knew that they were not on the front line, so they did not know what happened to such people. Constant heat burst is good, but it can even be A rank, but because of this, the battle ability ratio of the mid-rank A fire type giver is very small. The body simply cannot bear such tension, and if it is constantly forced to use this force, then a terrible thing will eventually happen. And the one who uses this ability will turn into an ember that will no longer be able to fight, and everything else around will simply turn into ashes, because all objects and people nearby will be burned. The test continued, and the monsters gradually surrounded the girls, preventing them from leaving. All those present had to show their abilities, which is why each time there were more and more monsters. Some could cope with their physical strength, even without using magical abilities. But this could not be enough, because there were too many monsters, and the physical abilities were not enough. Some participants' legs went numb from stress, which is why they couldn't even move independently. The indignant warrior could not understand how this girl could even be the chosen one if she was so nervous. In any case, the battle continued, and it was necessary to confront the villains who were gradually surrounding the girls. With each stage, the monsters became stronger, and they began to have weapons with which they fought. Ruthless creatures ran at people with great speed to inflict as much damage as possible. To make the attack more effective, they attacked in groups, so as not to leave the enemy a chance to resist. The awakened girl was extremely strong. Using her physical abilities, she continued to fight off the crowd of goblins. Clever enemies did not give any of the test participants the opportunity to relax, and attacked everyone. The terrible creatures had enormous speed and moved much faster than ordinary people. Suddenly, the girl, who was experiencing severe stress, discovered a new ability in herself, and used spikes with which she finished off her opponents. The ability was truly amazing, and very dangerous because it could be used unexpectedly. In the observation room, they immediately noticed that candidate number 8 Huan had discovered the ability to break through the floor. This was good news because her sparring potential was A. The ward began to rejoice, because the news was wonderful, and the rank is very rare. Such a talented fighter is really rare to come across. In fact, it was a pity that such a good talent was captured by a weak personality who is emotionally unstable. If this girl wants to become a fighter, she needs to train her character on an ongoing basis. He sighed heavily. One of the workers was really sad, because the abilities of donors are really very unpredictable. Those who have a strong will still have no ability, and those who are afraid have high potential. There was really nothing special about it, and he was just a gifted person. Hard work and constant effort can make a person stronger even without strong abilities. Meanwhile, the teacher was simply hysterical because she saw that reinforcements still had not arrived. A little worried, the guy exclaimed that reinforcements should arrive soon. They just had to hold on a little longer before they got out of here. In this case, the woman wanted to know how long they would need to stay here. But no one knew this, because the monsters continued to advance, and each time there were more and more of them. At the same time, the young man understood that right now many had already discovered their abilities. Watching the teacher, he wondered when she would finally show her abilities. He also believed that this was all a side effect of video games because he could see too many things differently and couldn't enjoy it all. Perhaps this sudden intrusion was a test, and perhaps the abilities of the gifted manifest themselves under stress, fear, or anxiety. Turning to the woman, the boy wanted to ask her if she felt anything. Yuni Zayasani immediately blushed and exclaimed that she really felt something. Xian Fan decided to find out exactly where and in what places the teacher could feel the change. The place was really unusual because one of her body parts had grown a lot and she gets very tired now when she runs. This really surprised both the opponents and the main character himself, because they did not expect that this was even possible. Events again continued to occur in the observation room. The challenge was really weird, and the people in it were funny and interesting, rather than panicking and fighting, but still finding time for jokes. In fact, what Yuni Zayasani said was not a joke, and she was serious from the very beginning. It only looked like a joke because the teacher was stupid and not nice. At the same time, the boy could not respond to the fact that one of the girl's body parts had increased greatly. Still, he decided to find out if anything had changed except this part of the body. Yuni Sayasani began to take offense at this behavior because she saw that the young man was very harsh with his teacher. Since they entered here, the woman is no longer his teacher, and there is no tutelage relationship between them. The woman still hasn't realized that now they must be from the same class. Looking at the guy, the girl could not believe his words, because she finally realized that she was no longer his teacher. The stunned Xian could not believe that only now she realized this. The monsters continued to approach. They were getting closer every second. The The terrifying creatures wanted to do everything possible to harm people as much as possible. Then the young man realized that because he was distracted, they were surrounded. The guy also noticed that the monsters had become stronger, and it seemed that they were changing. The goblins actually became stronger as they had more powerful weapons as well as stronger armor. The teacher again could not tolerate the monsters attacking her, and wanted to get support from her student. The woman literally begged him to help, because she was completely helpless in front of so many villains. The determined Xian understood that it was necessary to act and do at least something. Hugging the woman, he asked her not to be afraid and to rely on him, because he was ready to do anything to protect her. The observation room already knew that the time limit had been reached, and the wards wanted to know if they needed to complete this test. Still, the goddess of thunder decided to take pity on ordinary people and end this test. She also ordered that fighters be sent to clear this room and finish off all the monsters. The young man understood that despite his abilities, he was still not that fast, even much slower when compared to the abilities of the god rank. But this should be enough to deal with these small monsters. Suddenly, the teacher began to experience unbearable pain. The girl screamed with all her might that someone began to attack behind her, and it really was a monster that attacked her from behind and began to gnaw at her. Clutching his teeth with all his might, the merciless monster continued to bite the innocent Yuni Shasani. This sight greatly alarmed the guy, because due to his inaction, the teacher was now harmed. After thinking a little, he began to act, using his skill to neutralize the nearest monster. Falling to the floor, the monster was literally crushed as two people fell on top of it. The ugly creature showed no signs of life, and was now completely defeated. Suddenly, the system informed the main character that for killing an adult goblin his level was increased to 21. Sighing heavily, Xian Fan realized that this was an adult goblin, which is why he was promoted. Meanwhile, Yuni Zayasani was indignant because she did not understand why disciple Xian Fan continued to put pressure on her. It was really very difficult for her to endure this pain, and the guy was also pressing on her with his body. Goblin teeth were indeed very sharp and they could greatly harm a woman. The girl also began to be interested in another nuance, because she wanted to know why the young man had not been like this before. Suddenly, the goblins began to be killed and help finally arrived. It was Xiao Sanino who could easily finish off these weak goblins with one simple attack. The goddess really did not like the way the young man behaved towards his teacher. It seemed that she was even jealous. This couple was really amazing, because everyone around them is focused on the battle, and here they are flirting. The embarrassed hero did not know what to answer to this, and simply silently continued to look at the goddess of thunder. In turn, the girl wanted to know why he was staring at her like that. Sighing heavily, the guy did not understand what to answer her, and began to gradually get up. There was a punishment for flirting during this test, which is why Xiao Sanino hit the insolent person with all her might. Experiencing severe pain, he began to fly several tens of meters to the side, after which, he hit the wall with all his might, and because of this he lost consciousness. The blow was truly impressive because after just one kick, Xian Fan was already powerless. The alarmed teacher immediately ran up to her student in order to help him. The terribly strong blow caused irreparable harm. The hero even thought that he could die from it. But this blow was truly deserved, because the teacher admitted that he really flirted with her. And I had to remember well that you can't behave like that during tests. In any case, in a few minutes they need to gather in the lobby and leave the battlefield. The exhausted young man began to gradually walk into the lobby, and thought about the fact that his love for God had not dropped sharply. Now they wanted to go to the lobby and demand what was owed to them, to end this quickly. Unexpectedly, the teacher felt that the part of her body that the goblin attacked was in great pain. Concerned, Xian Fan immediately saw that there was a problem that needed to be solved urgently. The woman also found a magic crystal not far from her because she accidentally stepped on it. The smart guy immediately asked to give him this crystal in his hands so that he could look at it. The crystal was a fairly rare reward for killing a monster, which made them realize that they were very lucky. Yuni Shasani still wanted to understand whether this thing had at least some use. Putting the crystal in his pocket, he only said to the hero that, unfortunately, he doesn't know this yet. I continue to head to the lobby. They decided that they would ask the awakened ones. Some time later, events continued to happen in the lobby, and the tired warriors began to rest. The heroes who were damaged began to heal their wounds so that they could recover as quickly as possible. Entering inside, the boy and his teacher were really very amazed, because they were surrounded by a huge number of people who were in this room. The doctor immediately noticed the new arrivals and began to run towards them in order to provide first aid. As soon as the doctor approached the girl, she immediately noticed that she had a serious wound. The girl did not immediately decide to undergo treatment, because she was quite ashamed of the place where the wound was inflicted. The doctor also felt a little awkward, but still understood that it was necessary to help the patient. The caring doctor asked the girl not to move in order to help her. Xian Fan decided to turn away so as not to see what would happen there. Unexpectedly, he noticed that they were in the lobby, where there were really a huge number of people. And as it turned out, all the guys who were nearby began to stare at how Uni Sayasani was being treated. Angry, the guy shouted that no one should look there. Suddenly, someone exclaimed that everyone should be quiet and not say a word. It was the goddess of thunder who said that everyone in this room was probably shocked. And fortunately for them, the test is finally over. Xiao Sunino now had to inform everyone about the upcoming deployment. No one really expected this outcome of events, because all people thought that it was an accident. Everyone began to get angry because they understood that one of the people could die peacefully, and then the awakened ones would be to blame for everything. Some present understood that this was indeed a test that they had successfully passed. Unable to bear the fact that people began to scream, the goddess of thunder immediately ordered them to shut up. And she asked them to listen, because even though they received their abilities, everything is not so simple. Of those who were able to obtain these abilities, most will not even be able to develop them. Still, not everyone could understand how to continue to develop their abilities, and what their abilities were in general. The teacher also did not understand what ability Xian Fan had, because she had not seen him use magic. The woman still could not understand why, when he hugs her, she immediately feels a loss of strength. The stupid Uni Shasani suggested that she secretes Yin and fills it with yang energy. In fact, it was just the teacher's rich imagination, and she decided to share her assumptions with the student. It was also announced that after a long test and observation of givers, they found that strong emotions best contribute to the development of abilities. Among these emotions, fear and hatred for the success of others, these emotions are the strongest. For some participants, this was actually not surprising because they suddenly felt connected to their abilities. Other awakened ones did not understand what abilities they had until now, and wanted to find out about it as soon as possible. Some suffered greatly after using their abilities, but were ready to fight further in order to contribute to the salvation of humanity. Because ordinary people need to be saved from the terrible hellish monsters who dare to attack everyone.